from the Crypt.
What is up, freaks? Welcome back to Tales from the Crypt, recording number 4 of the week. We did 2 on Monday, 1 on Wednesday, and now we are here Friday afternoon, happy hour, after an exciting week in New York City with the Chain Code Labs Lightning Residency Bootcamp. I've got somebody who is just at their hack day, the final day of the residency. The demos, where everybody was demoing what they built.
I saw the future, Marty.
Well, he hasn't even let me introduce him yet. He can't even. He's
just keep interrupting.
He's got bated breath waiting to tell me about everything that went down today. I want to introduce you freaks to Justin Moon. Justin, welcome to the pod.
It's a pleasure to be on the pod. I've listened to probably a third of your episodes, and I
appreciate that.
I'm getting close. I'll get to 100% eventually.
It's not like you get a merit badge or anything if you listen to all of them. But
I'll make my own. I'll make my own little merit badge, hang it above my door.
Yeah. Before we jump into the exciting news of the day, we were just reminiscing and talking about your journey and how you got caught up to speed with Bitcoin. I didn't know this until you just told me, but you were relatively new to Bitcoin in like the last 10 to 11 months.
I was a no-coiner a year ago, totally. I thought the whole idea was ridiculous.
So I think, I was just telling you, you're a developer, and we had an episode a few episodes ago with Hasu, who is not a developer, and he is somebody that got caught up to speed with Bitcoin relatively quickly, and I was fascinated by that. So we talked about what he did to get caught up to speed very quickly, and it was a fascinating episode. People love it. And I think your story in particular can be a very good complementary story to that, because you were a developer and you have a different avenue through which you were approaching the subject, and you caught up really quickly. So let's jump into that. What's your tale? How the fuck did you get into this?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think I'll just go at this in a sort of a roundabout way. The thing that kind of got me interested the most was about a year ago. My mother called me and was concerned because my dad was buying meme coins, or he was trying to. I don't think he could figure out how, but he wanted to buy like Putin coin especially. He thought it was He thought it was the funniest thing. I wasn't interested in Bitcoin at all or any of the real ones, but he thought the like Putin coin, fuck coin was one of them. He thought he wanted to pay at the grocery store with that. So
where is your dad finding these shit coins?
I don't, it's still a mystery how he discovered it. I mean, he's recently retired. I mean, he likes the stock market, likes trading, likes that sort of stuff. And so, I think the kind of penny stock aspect to it was, he just thought it was a fun thing to do in his retirement. And so I always thought that Bitcoin was something for internet nerds. And like, I wasn't even nerdy enough to get into it. And so,
what do you consider yourself a nerd, though?
Borderline. I mean, I sort of go in and out. I can play like kind of a little bit of both.
I like that.
Yeah,
I like to think I can.
I try to be
too.
go both ways, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, there's parts of me that are super nerdy. I just sit and program all week sometimes. Like that's a pretty nerdy thing to do. But so the thing that really opened my eyes is like all of a sudden my dad, like total. He's like 70 years old, not really interested in technology. Like he saw these coins as real. And I didn't think that would ever happen. I didn't think we'd ever cross that threshold. Or else I would have like read the damn white paper sooner. I didn't read it until like December or something. So that's the thing that really opened my eyes. And the first thing I did was try to like make sure he didn't buy these things, or like at least had 2-factor, and I tried to lock everything down. Then after a while, it started dawning on me, like, this is quite an interesting, like, like the anthropologist in me, let's say, so this is an interesting human phenomenon. What the hell's going on here? And so I slowly started doing my homework. And way back in the day, I was interested in, like, I read, Benjamin Graham, Intelligent Investor, all these, the kind of the foundational texts for traditional security analysis with stocks and bonds and stuff. I read this stuff in high school. In some of it in maybe middle school. So like I read all the Warren Buffett letters. So I have an understanding of like the core investment ideas. And then when I was 20, the financial crisis happened. And I actually, the first time I ever bought a stock, chose to buy a stock, I bought it for my brother. We decided to we were reading the Wall Street Journal, and we saw these charts going down right by the dip. So I bought this. I convinced my brother with his $500. Like we were both broke at the time. $500 to go buy American Home Mortgage, Within 2 weeks, it was bankrupt. So like that gave me a healthy amount of conservatism, right?
You get wrecked right away.
Yeah, it's a good way to. It's a really good experience. Like I'm not gonna be scammed in my lifetime. I know it because I scammed my brother when I was still like a teenager. So that was kind of what. So that was kind of my background. And so when I came into this crypto stuff, I was really conservative, right? Like this is really dangerous. Like I have a preference for productive assets, right? And Bitcoin's not a productive asset. Like Pierre Richard has some really interesting points about this recently. He's talking about, buying Bitcoin is not an investment. It's really a speculation. You're speculating that this becomes the money of the world, or at least like the new digital gold. And it's not really an investment. You're not putting capital up for a productive enterprise.
No.
And so, so that's why I never got into it. And so I started re-questioning these beliefs when I saw my dad. And, over 6 months, I kind of just slowly decided it started to make sense. The things that really, like I was looking at my bookshelf. I bought that Chris Berniske book, Crypto Assets. So like,
did that set you back a little bit?
Boy, that's like, I just want to keep it just as proof that I'm not making this up. Like, it's highlighted. There are notes in the margins. This is like a really damning.
Wait, before you dive deep into like your journey down the rabbit hole, what were you doing before? Were you programming? Were you?
Well, that's a good question. I said I was going to go at this in a disorganized way, and it's important. Yeah. So I got into programming like 5 years ago. I did university a little late. I actually dropped out of high school and then university once, and then went back for a math degree. So I had like a weird path. And so when I was doing the math degree, I did it really fast and got sick of school and was going to drop out again. But then I did a study abroad program, which sucked. And in China, it was like the professors were really bad. And so I did this thing called Thinkful. It's just like an online programming school, 3 months, 10 hours a week. And the innovative thing they did is they just match you up with a mentor who you talk to every week. And basically, they just help you get unstuck. Because when you're learning to program, the really hard thing is you just have these problems that any experienced person could solve instantly, but a noob, it's the end of your entire career.
Yeah.
You just can't get past it. It's a roadblock. And so that helped me get up to speed. And I came back home after that, graduated a semester later, moved out to Silicon Valley without a job, actually lived in my car for a little while. And
really?
Found an interesting job at a startup. I was like the first non-co-founder at the startup as an intern, which is an unusual situation. I just met the CTO at a meetup. He was an early programmer at Pinterest, so he was a really impressive guy. And I mostly just looked at it as like, hey, I'm going to learn a lot here. Mm-hmm. And so what we did is we basically were making programmable money. It was like a crypto way of describing it. We were making a kind of like an API for issuing debit and credit cards. If you want to look for an analog, you can just Google Stripe issuing. Stripe now has this business. And so we were really onto something. It could have been a big deal. And then the second thing we did was we had like an expense management solution for companies that would that didn't have reimbursements. So all the employees would be issued debit cards, and they'd use an app to request funds for expenses and then to upload receipts and everything. So it's a cool thing. So instead of having the people spend their own money, they'd spend the company's money, be reimbursed, and it was all free to the company, and we'd take the interchange, right? That 2%, approximately 2% fee that Visa, right? The crypto people hate. Right?
You were a middleman?
Yeah, so I was a middle. Like we were the house, man. It was a great business model, but we just didn't pull it off for many reasons. Probably because we tried to do two things at once. But it was a great experience, right? I built a couple mobile apps. I've actually built I was part of a group of about 4 or 5 of us that built the API that Square Cash's debit card program was first prototyped on.
Hell yeah.
And so
Big fan
we were sitting in the office when Jack Dorsey swiped it, and we were like, oh, man, we thought the program was going to get killed, right? It was, we had Venmo and Square were like, this was like 2 years ago or more. And so it was, sorry, I keep pulling the mic away. And
it's all good.
Marty gesticulates. So that was a really great experience, and we were close to having a big win. Like we just didn't pull it off. And then I got real burnt out. I stuck around too longer than I should. I should have done something different, but I got kind of burnt out and then didn't do any real work for a couple of years. And then so I did some soul searching, a lot of reading, and I was doing all kinds of different traveling a lot. And so that's when I kind of encountered Bitcoin. So it was a good.
What were you reading and where were you traveling to?
So I did a long trip. So the last thing I did for that company was I set up a remote team in India.
Mm-hmm.
If they wanted to do some remote development, we hired an Indian guy who had done a lot of this outsourcing in India, and he was really good at it. And so we needed a programmer who was cavalier enough to just go to India and organize this. And, traveling in India is not the most organized thing in the world. And so I was the only one who'd do it. So I was like, okay, if you guys pay me to do this, I'll do it. And so I did, and I set up this team in India in a couple small, Hyderabad, Indore. They're like smaller cities. Mm-hmm. It's an amazing experience. Got to really understand this whole industry. This outsourcing industry, got to meet a bunch of interesting people. It was interesting. That's when the Trump election was happening. So they were all the joke was that they were all praying Trump got elected so their friends would be deported and they could hang out with them again. Like the funniest shit ever. If Trump's elected, VJ comes back. I miss VJ. It's like, oh my God, that is so funny.
That is actually, I actually worked in the outsourcing industry as well. But our developers were located in Colombia and Ecuador.
Interesting.
It's an interesting business model.
Yeah, I mean, it's one of those cool things where you can work from anywhere, and so excuse me. You have to edit that out.
I'm definitely not editing that out. We're gonna get Justin's loogie on the podcast. We can cut this out. This is at minute 11:35. Minute 11. Justin's already hacking. Too much cheese on the pizza, apparently.
Yeah.
Do you need anything?
Do you have anything to make me salivate? Do you have cough drops in it?
We have a mint right to the left of the flour. Bang bang. Yeah, what are you doing getting the grocery store pizza when you have Joe's Pizzeria right there?
That's better. I was coming here and I was so excited. I forgot that you said it was near the subway.
So where'd you walk? Did you walk to Kent? Yeah. I'm sorry.
Rich people thing. Okay, where were we? I totally forgot what I was talking about.
We were talking about outsourcing development and the business model. That's an interesting business model.
Yeah. So that was an interesting experience, and so that my trip started there, and then I went to, I forget exactly. I think I went to Cambodia, Vietnam. I was gonna ride my motorcycle across Vietnam, and as I was negotiating to buy one for $200, I witnessed a fatal accident on a motorbike, and that sort of made me reconsider. Right. That was probably the saddest thing I've ever seen. And so that changed my trip a little bit. I ended up going to Nepal. I went to Nepal. I stayed at a monastery for a while. I hiked the Annapurna circuit. It's like a big 20-day hiking trip around a huge mountain.
That sounds pretty dope.
Amazing. When you get up to the top, you wake up at 4:30 in the morning because you want to get out before the sun hits because the sun's a lot more intense up there. And you get up, and you're just surrounded by these white mountains, and they're higher than you think they'd be. It's just like you're surrounded, and it's 5,000 meters or something. It's really, I think meters. Yeah, it's really high up there. So when you start hiking, you take one step every 2 breaths, kind of that's what I was doing because it's just hard to get oxygen. And it was an amazing experience. And then I went to China for a little bit after that. I used to speak Chinese, still kind of speak Chinese.
Mandarin or Cantonese?
Mandarin.
Okay.
Don't test me on it. I've forgotten nearly everything. But yes, that's my trip. And so, I came back, and then my parents retired, so I was hanging out with them, playing golf a little bit. And so I had some time off and I did a little contract here and there, built a couple projects for fun. But I was in a really open mind when the whole Bitcoin bull market happened, and I was aware of it. I tried to build an Ethereum dApp in 2015.
What?
Yeah, I was aware of Ethereum pre-ICO. I thought it was an interesting idea. never as an investment. Like I never bought any. I thought about building stuff with it. And so the thing I built, I mean, this is kind of, it's funny to look back on it, right? Because I'd almost totally forgotten about this. And so the thing I built was like, I was like, okay, what is Ethereum good? Like, what can we build with Ethereum that you can't build elsewhere? Well, it's like, it's like this extrajudicial thing, right? We can get around laws with it, right? So I tried to build a bookie, right? I called it Vinny. Mm-hmm. This is going to be the name of the bookie.
Vinny.
Kind of like a New York... it's kind of a
New York.
Vinny. Hey,
Vinny.
Hey, you What's the spread on the Bulls, Vinny?
Hey, we're going to take the over on this one, all right?
Exactly. So that's what it was going to be. And I mean, it's funny in a couple of ways. First, I didn't finish building it because it was really complicated. And that's why I gave up on it. I was like, I don't know why I need to do all this to make a stupid bookie. And second, it was like I couldn't think of anything to build except for something that's very easy to build with a centralized system, but illegal, right? Mm-hmm. And so, you look at like the people behind EOS right now. I mean, like Multi-Chain Capital is like one of the big funders of that, and their partners were just tweeting recently, like
Multi-coin capital or Polychain.
Multi-coin.
Multi-coin or Polychain.
Yeah, multi-coin. They're probably both. I'm talking about multi-coin. Yeah, good. So they were tweeting like, "Hey, EOS. We thought that all the gambling stuff would happen on Ethereum. Look, it's happening on EOS. Yay! We have all this good DApps and like." So like even these guys are like excited about this thing that I considered like 3 years ago and just said, this is kind of not a good idea, right? Let's just like, I don't know, maybe just wait until they legalize sports books or something like
that, or like maybe
which they have.
Maybe bookies are essential.
Yeah, exactly. So I mean, I don't know. So it's like it's just funny that I abandoned it and that I kind of gave up on it, and then I mean, a lot of people saw it just. They ran with it for the same reasons I started to run with it and then immediately dropped the ball. It's like, this isn't going anywhere.
Yeah.
And I still think the problems are the same. The applications people are trying to build, like the EOS is why I bring that up, is like, they're still the same thing that I tried to, it was like the first thing that popped into my mind. I don't think that the state of the art's advanced at all in years with some of the brightest people in the world, which is shocking. And so like, the reason I bring this up is I was aware of this whole crypto thing going back. I just always thought that I didn't feel the need for new money. Like these bucks I have are fine, whatever. And so, the other thing that really got me interested is, as you can see, like so we were building this programmable money at my startup. Like I thought it was like a cool thing to, like the thing I really saw is we could help companies allocate capital with this like
infrastructure,
like internal expense management solution. That's what the capitalist in me. That's like one of the deeply held beliefs I have is that free markets and the price mechanism and all these things are really, really positive things, and they get hate on a lot, but like they're really good and they're really important. And so when the capitalist in me realized that our most important market, the market for money, the market for capital, that this was run by the government, like it never occurred to me. And so when I realized that like it's a government kind of cartel.
Well, technically it is not. The Federal Reserve is a private entity.
Jesus Christ, Marty.
But it was given powers via the government.
Jesus Christ, Marty, give me a break. I don't care what the legal stuff says, man. Who appoints the guy or the woman that runs it? I don't know who runs it now. Is it still Janet Yellen? No, she's gone.
I think it's Powell now.
Yeah. Powell, yeah. The president, right? The president.
Yeah.
So I don't buy that at all.
No, yeah, the president appoints a Fed head, right?
Yeah, is not the look of a private enterprise. Marty.
Exactly, but I actually didn't even realize that Janet had.
Yeah. I think Bitcoin sign guy drove a stake.
Right. I was talking to Bitcoin sign guy last night. I fucking love that kid.
Oh, he was my favorite podcast.
He's a lot of people's favorites. He's
an interesting guy.
He was waxing poetic on that one.
I mean, the perfect guy to become a meme, really.
We also crushed a whole bottle of vodka during that, and
I gotta get going. I'm talking too much.
We recorded for like 30 minutes, and I wasn't recording. We had a conversation for like 30 minutes. I wasn't recording. We had to start over while already very inebriated, and it turned into a great conversation. People love it. I still love it.
Yeah.
I'll go back and listen to it. Shout out BSG. Thanks for doing what you do. This is like the third shout out he's got.
BSG, Bitcoin Sign Guy. He's already got an acronym.
Yeah, he's got an acronym.
I got to catch up.
So speaking of catch up, how the hell did you catch up like with the Bitcoin? So with the Bitcoin knowledge. So you had built an app on Ethereum, or tried to at least, thought it was shit.
Failed.
Forgot about like
no one's built a DApp really at the end of the day. There's a couple, I guess, but none of them really.
Well,
I guess
something like Silk Road could be argued to have been a DApp.
Okay, yeah, sure.
But No, I'm just trying to
ingest.
Yeah. So how did you get caught up? Like, how did you come to see the forest from the trees? Like, you seem like you avoided.
I mean, it took time, right? Like
avoided the ICO. You were telling me that the Nakamoto Institute helped you out a lot.
Yeah. So I mean, I went and it's funny. I started reading like an ICO's white paper once. I think it was called I forget what it was called, but and then it occurred to me I hadn't read the Bitcoin white paper, so I'm like, oh fuck. Okay, the that's something I should do. So I went and read the Bitcoin white paper and was like, wow, this is because I got a math degree, I can program. I understood everything basically. Like I could understand it, right? And I think it's, that math degree helped in that quite a bit. Like I could really understand what he was talking about, and so I was struck by the elegance of it. It was like this is not a joke system. This is built by a pro. This is built by this is really novel, really interesting. I don't understand it totally, but it's like every sentence. I was really struck by that, and so I think I bought the Mastering Bitcoin, somewhat shortly after that. I read a little bit of it, got kind of bored with it, right? I was moving slowly, and so yeah, I mean, over about 4 or 5 months, while reading all kinds of other stuff, I read Mastering Bitcoin. I think I read Safe's book, the Bitcoin Standard, as soon as it came out.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it
was like April, right?
Yeah, I was one of the first. I mean, it's basically as soon as it was announced, I bought it and read it. And so that was one of the things that really, maybe not as soon as it came out, but shortly afterwards. And then, but the thing that really did it was the Nakamoto Institute. That was really I started reading all the stuff, Pierre Richard, Bitstein, a lot of Nick Szabo, even Kurt Kraswitz, the guy who's kind of not really there anymore. He had a couple of interesting things back in the day.
He's got some great pieces up
there. Yeah.
He coined hyper-Bitcoinization.
Yeah, exactly. So
I'm turning into Bitcoin is a great little meme.
Yeah. So I don't remember exactly what. I just went through and just inhaled it for 2 weeks. I read a lot of the site,
as most should.
Yeah, exactly.
Nakamoto Institute is one of the richest treasure troves of information when it comes to Bitcoin, the cypherpunk movement, and cryptography innovations in general.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, and Bitstein at Bitstein, he's pretty soon doesn't have a Christian name anymore. He's just a handle at this point,
right?
His name will be forgotten. But
I've been calling him Michael Bitstein.
Yeah, I mean, I
his
wonder
real
when
last
he's
name's
going to
Goldstein.
change his legal name. Get on it, man. He's got the greatest handle of all time.
Right. Yeah, but what they've what they put together is incredible.
He's a great. He's kind of like a cataloger of these things. There's a real word for that,
a historian.
Yeah, he's kind of a story. There's just a lot of this stuff. I mean, the Nakamoto Institute has some of the earliest versions of the Bitcoin Core C++ code base, and that was one of the first places where I went and downloaded that and started looking at it. And it was like, well, shit, this is I don't know C++ really, but it's only a couple thousand lines of code. It's pretty small. I can kind of read it, as a hacky prototype, but the first version of the code, people like to revere Satoshi, and for good reason, but there are all kinds of, it's kind of parts of it were a piece of crap,
Right.
He had a whole payment channel implementation that just completely didn't work, which is why we have Lightning 10 years later. I'm going to give a short talk about this at the Hack Day this weekend. But so it's he had all things, he had a bunch of things that he screwed up, but it's just amazing how the things that mattered, he didn't
figure it out, right?
He got enough of the really important
and
things.
he worked on the code base for 2 years before launching it, correct? I mean, I
don't know.
So another resource on the Nakamoto Institute is satoshi.nakamotoinstitute.org, the complete Satoshi.
Oh, they just launched that, right?
They've had that for years.
Okay.
But they just redid it and made it more responsive for mobile and shit like that.
Gotcha.
But in that, you can go see Satoshi's emails, his blog or his forum posts.
Mm-hmm.
You can see him interacting with the community.
Yeah, over a year and a half.
And at one point, I forget whether there was an email or a Bitcoin Talk posts, but he basically admitted, he was like, "Yeah, I've been working on. I wrote the code before I wrote the white paper.
Yeah,
so
yeah.
I know the code work." And he mentioned just like haphazardly, like, I've been working on this for like 2 years. So
it makes sense. I mean, I admire that. Like, I mean, it's really different from the current way people are trying to improve Bitcoin, right? They say, I'm going to start with a white paper. I'm going to fund my venture. And then I'm going to see. It's just an experiment, guys. Just an experiment. I'm going to see if we can improve it.
Right.
And you see the opposite with Satoshi. It's like, hey, I'm going to sit in my basement. I'm a cypherpunk. I'm going to sit in my basement. I'm going to write this thing until I'm satisfied that it works. And then I'll tell people about it. I mean, maybe I'm saying he because it's a masculine name. Maybe there are a few of them, probably. I mean, it's such a great achievement. It would make more sense.
Yeah.
And then he writes the white paper, right? It's an
8-page white paper.
Yeah,
it's not some
beautiful.
40-page
even the lightning white
technobabble.
paper, man. That's I was just reading that. That sucker's like 45 pages
Right?
or something.
Yeah.
It's you know, that there were a few of these, and I'm sure there were other things, but I forgot them. You know, the big ones. I also read I read a textbook by Thomas Sowell. He's a great he's a great economist. Who's very good at putting complex ideas into simple language, and he's just also like kind of a really wise man.
He's a very wise man.
I mean, there's like a Twitter account, unofficial Twitter account that just tweets out quotes of his, and it's just like regularly trends like 5,000 tweets, retweets. It's
huge follow on Twitter, and then I highly recommend checking out his interview. I believe it was on the Rubin Report last year. April of last year, and Thomas Sowell, he's a dude from Harlem.
It's crazy. He's a dude
from
he's a dude from not only from Harlem. I mean, he grew up. His I think his parents died. He grew up in the South and was just sent to his grandparents to live up in Harlem, and like.
Yeah, I believe he was born in North Carolina. Got sent up here, like you said, after his parents died. Yeah.
It's just in a crazy rags to riches story. He joined the Navy, then went to Harvard afterwards, and became like an emeritus professor at Stanford now. Yeah. And like a great economist. And so he wrote this great book, which I really encourage any of you to read if you don't know economics really. It's just called Basic Economics. It's a pretty long book, but it's all in plain English. Like one of the problems with economics is they got all these silly graphs that sort of like it make it hard to understand what the really pure ideas are. You know, you can read a whole economics textbook 101, and then you leave like, well, what were the ideas? What should I take away from this after I've forgotten all the specifics, right?
Let me pull up the Laffer curve for you.
Yeah, it's like I don't want to learn that. And so the cool thing about Sowell is he doesn't have a single graph. It's all like it's all kind of like thought experience. Well, what will happen if you fix the price on housing? Right? Or like, what'll happen if you make it so you can't build, right? Well, the population will continue to grow, so you have more people per house, and so then the prices will go up. It's just like simple experiments like that, which like a city like San Francisco just completely fails to understand.
They desperately need Thomas Sowell giving them
they do.
Quality,
they do.
Quality
in more ways
advice.
than one, and he's only 30 minutes away. I don't know what's so, you know,
right? No, and then like his explanation of minimum wage laws and why they're bad and how they sort of block out a part of the workforce. I mean,
he's got a lot of stuff about affirmative action that's really interesting. He's just got a lot. I mean, he wrote like 30 books, like all this stuff, like Guns, Germs, and Steel by Jared Diamond. It's this like big thing about, you know, kind of
That's my dad's favorite book.
Yeah, so he's like rethinking like what really was going on with colonialism. And I mean, I'm not an expert on this, but apparently, like, I mean, a lot of these ideas, I read a few of the books, a lot of these ideas were articulated by Sowell very similarly, like 5 years earlier. And Jared Diamond got all the credit, partially because Sowell's like a black conservative and has been really hated on by mainstream everyone because, like, black conservatives not supposed to exist, right? And so he's one of these, like, you know, forgotten intellectual figures that'll probably be more revered after he's dead because he was just playing on a different level, right? He's above the rim. So the rest of us are on the court. He's above the rim.
I've been pushing for a public debate between him and Alexandria Cortez, Ocasio-Cortez.
Yeah, that would be tough.
Right? Because, I mean,
he's kind of past that debating age. I think he's like 90-something.
I know, but I think it's important. I think if people are seriously pushing democratic socialist intentions in this country, it's dangerous. And like socialism has proven many
Yeah,
times.
it doesn't have a good track record.
That it ends in misery. And there's people openly pushing for socialism in America right now, which I think is scary.
Yeah, it is.
And I think a debate between those two would enlighten a lot of people.
Yeah, I mean, he's got some great debates if you go on YouTube, like, from against that perspective. But, like, I mean, it just speaks to how long he was, like, William F. Buckley was the moderator.
Right.
Guy's been dead for like a generation. It's insane. Like, and we want him to, debate now. It's just like
debate like a 27.
And he's like this super suave dude with a fro. It's like the 70s.
Yeah.
Like, what a baller, man.
Yeah, he's a boss.
Yeah, so I read his book, and again, I encourage you guys to, like, if you want to understand a little bit about economics, like, maybe I wouldn't have got into all this if I hadn't read that book. I'm not really sure. Maybe. But it really helped, understand incentives. And for me, it was really like the importance of a price mechanism, like the price. And I read this like 6 months ago, 8 months ago. So I don't really have a great handle on it, but it's like the ability to set a price on the free, like a great example he gives is like, people don't like that in a disaster zone, the merchants will increase the price of bottled water, right? Like, everyone hates that. What a terrible thing to do to exploit people. But what happens if you artificially cap the price of a bottle of water in a disaster zone?
Somebody's got to corner the supply.
Yeah, so one guy gets all the supply, and his family's great, and then everybody else dies of thirst. Mm-hmm. Because, like, a bottle of water in a normal everyday life is not a very big deal. It's not a matter of life and death. In a disaster zone, it is, and so it's a very different commodity at that point, a product at that point. And so, if you don't allow the price mechanism to coordinate, like, who gets what, at least to some degree, you're just gonna have one guy take the whole thing, and it's terrible.
Yeah.
And this mechanism, kind of happens everywhere, and it's a big reason why the U.S. pulled ahead of the Soviet Union, because, he has a lot about this in the book. It's like, they had the smartest people in the world coordinating the Soviet economy, and they had to set prices on 10,000 goods. And so what would happen is all the lower functionaries they were just trying to advance their own careers. So they'd start, like, gaming the system, right? Mm-hmm. If they were required to, paint their tractors red, they would hoard red paint. And then all of a sudden, the rest of the economy wouldn't have red paint, and so you'd have green fire trucks. And, like, it's like, what the hell's going on? And so, that's a great example of the importance of the price mechanism. And so, like, let's bring it back to crypto. Like, when somebody wants an artificially stable coin, I'm like, you fucking idiot,
Right? It's the biggest meme in crypto right now.
This price mechanism is so important. Like,
you can't. Stable coins just hide volatility, or attempt to hide volatility, until a black swan event happens. And
you want, like, the beautiful thing that's happening. I mean, I'll speak from the perspective that Bitcoin. I'll attempt to say what Bitcoin is. It's like, I think we're kind of witnessing the monetization of an asset, right? At least a partial part of the way, right? Like, you could monetize any asset. You could use candles as money. It wouldn't work so well. Like, Safe's book, The Bitcoin Standard, has a great thought experiment of what happens if you try to monetize copper, for example, or silver, which was tried in, like, the 80s. Mm-hmm. And so go read that if you want to kind of understand what I'm talking about. But so it seems like that's what we're seeing, a new asset's being monetized, and, like, this is not going to be a stable transition. Like, it makes sense that the price goes all over the place because we're negotiating money.
Whether or not we believe this is money.
The definition of money. The entire reality of our everyday lives, how we pay for diapers, Like,
I'm still wearing diapers, by the way.
Dude, I am too, man. That pizza I had on the way over is going to really cut into the diaper supply I brought here to New York. But please edit that out.
No. We're proud adult diaper wearers.
Yeah,
this
so
podcast right now.
So, like, I like markets. Sorry, I just keep turning
He keeps
away.
pulling the mic away from himself.
Yeah.
I like it, though. You're deep in thought.
I'm deep in thought, yeah.
Like, going into
I got a real good man spread on right now.
He's got a very, very big power pose. I'm sure your serotonin levels are high.
So, I mean, the price mechanism is really important, and prices are, I mean, it's like one of these everyday things. Like money itself, you kind of neglect the role it plays, and it's really important to learn a little bit about it. And then, like, on the other hand, I don't think you need to be an economist to understand it. Like, this is one thing all the normies, especially the Silicon Valley normies, like to shit on us about is like, well, hey, I trust Nobel Prize winners over you. And I'm like, fair point. Like, like.
But as somebody who spent 4 years at university studying economics, like, you realize pretty quickly once you're studying it, like, these people fucking don't know what they're talking about. Like, and you couple studying it while you're actually working in finance, and it's like, holy shit, this is like, I mean, all.
The really troubling thing is that, you know, I mean, safe. I mean, you were at the Nakamoto Institute dinner in Dallas. I sat next to him, and he was telling me how, like, you know, you basically can't study practically no monetary economist in the U.S. is unfunded by the Fed. Like, directly or indirectly, they, you know, get their money from the Fed. And, you know, whoever pays your bills basically owns you, like, to some extent, right? Which is, you know, why it's important we have independent Bitcoin developers, for example, right?
Yes. Like Luke.
Like Luke, exactly. He's just recently kind of like doing his Patreon, and so, you know.
Go support him.
Yeah, I mean, he's the most. I mean, the guy's kind of crazy sometimes, but like,
definitely crazy. I don't believe with his religious views, but
yeah, I mean, but look at some of his interesting, like, he's had a lot of really huge contributions.
Soft fork SegWit. He figured out how to do that.
And so, you know, this is the opposite side of the coin. It's important to have some independent Bitcoin developers, but you know, that's the really fucked up thing about, you know, monetary economics. Is like, the simple understanding of economics that I have is like, incentives are all important, and you guys all make your money from the same institution. That's trouble. So, like, you know, well, this criticism is kind of valid. Like, yeah, I did learn this shit on Twitter, you know, like, it's true. You got me.
Is that a criticism though?
I mean, it's not criticism or not. There's like a shade of truth to that. You know, you want to be wary of some, you know, internet tough guy. And, you know, somebody who, you know, you got to be wary of this sort of person who's, you know, has not studied deeply, read some YouTube article or Wikipedia article and thinks they're an expert. That's true.
Yeah, should be skeptical,
but yeah. So yeah, I forget what my point in bringing that up was, but yeah. So I mean, the point of this whole thing is like this whole idea of like, you know, you don't have to have a deep understanding of economics, and I got enough where when I encountered Bitcoin, I was like, wow, this is like an extrajudicial system to restore a free market in money. And
well, I agree. But as somebody who's studied economics, like, that's what like baffles me. I'm like, economics has like become such a pseudoscience, and you're trying to turn life into an algorithm, basically, into a model.
Yeah.
That like economics at the end of the day is psychology. It is it's the science of why people make decisions. Mm-hmm. If you're going to get economics down
the science of human action, right?
Exactly. If you're going to get economics definition down to one sentence, it is the science or the observation of human decisions based off of scarce resources. And it really should not be that complicated. Like, it should not be something where people look at it as like a daunting topic to understand. It's
it's
common
really every
sense
day,
at the end of the day. Yes, exactly.
Yeah. I mean, it's like how you run your household.
And that's why, like, when you go to economics classes, like, sometimes the best example of pure economic systems are like drug dealers or black markets or like people that never went to get an economics degree, but they just know how markets act from interacting and being a part of them. And it's not something that should be some daunting experience to learn economics. Economics is very approachable if you
and applicable.
Yes, very applicable if you're able to see past the veneer of models and
which is why
prediction
great.
charts. Yeah, exactly. Which really are
more distracting.
They're very they're very distracting. So they're all based on like retrospect. They're trying to basically explain what happened
in
the
past.
It's
like back testing your Bitcoin trade.
Exactly.
It's like, beware.
Right? And that's so one thing.
Beware, that model did work.
So when I did work in finance, one of my jobs, we were a fund of funds. So we were a fund that invested in other hedge funds. And my job would be to sit there and I would literally have billionaires come and pitch me their funds. Like, this is what our trading strategy has done in the past. And actually, we're going to launch this new strategy. And here's the back tested results. And the back test of results always gave me the fucking biggest laugh, because sometimes we give these funds like, all right, this is a convincing argument for your investment thesis. Your back tested results look okay. We throw some money at them, allocate some funds, and then live performance would look nothing like back tested results. Like back tested results are fairy dust.
Yeah, that's rough.
And a lot of what our economy projections in our economy are based off of are similar models that are built using similar sort of data structure, not data structures, but heuristics for how to explain things.
Yeah, so that's one of the things that's so refreshing about Bitcoin. It's like, hey, we're not gonna write dissertation on why this monetary policy was correct. It's like, it's really like something an engineer would do. Like, let's choose something simple. Let's have a fixed supply. Let's have it halve every 4 years, and let's have this whole peer-to-peer network that can enforce this policy. And like, I really appreciate that about. I appreciate the difference in that decision between that decision and what like an economist would do, where they want to like prove everything and supply data for every decision, and I really like that about Bitcoin. And I think that's one of the reasons why, it's important that you have a simple protocol. And the more I work with Bitcoin and the more I see what other people are trying to do as they try to improve Bitcoin, the more I appreciate the simplicity of the protocol, the simplicity of the transaction model, the simplicity of what it takes to join the network as a node, which is something I teach this little bootcamp, BUIDL Bootcamp. This is one of the things we do. We write raw Python code to join as basically a full node and to start doing initial block download. We have no dependencies. You have to process every byte by hand. You have to learn what every little bit and byte means. And by the end, we have like a script that can basically, we parse the first couple hundred blocks, execute the scripts. And the first one is Satoshi's transaction to Halfini. It's like block 170. It's a pay to pub key transaction. It's the simplest kind. No one does this anymore.
That's
it's not. They don't hash the pub key. They just pay directly to the.
That's John Newberry told me an interesting theory about this.
Okay.
So if Bitcoin were to be a quantum computer alarm system, the fact that
this is when we get what do you call it? We're getting
cosmic.
We're getting cosmic now. It's happening.
Satoshi, he still has his coins in a pay to pub key wallet. It's not pay to pub key hash. So it is more susceptible to quantum hacks.
It is.
So maybe that's intentional. So if we see Satoshi's coins move, we can assume that potentially quantum computers are here.
Oh, John.
It's not his theory. He was reiterating it to me. But I love that theory.
Yeah, I mean, it's hilarious. But yeah, so that's one of the things I really kind of appreciate. And this is so like, let's kind of move into why, like, so I started, so what I started doing after I became convinced like Bitcoin might be new money, and I wanted to approach it as a programmer, right? Because it's like, so I wanted to approach it as a programmer. So I did something that turned out to be really smart. I went and signed up for Jimmy Song's programming blockchain bootcamp, a little 2-day workshop. I live in Texas. I had to fly to Toronto. It was expensive. His class is thousands of dollars, but I got like airborne, so to speak. So I could, you learn to create and sign a Bitcoin transaction.
You got to hand. A point where you're dangerous.
Yeah, I'm dangerous. And so, excuse me. And I have ideas now. I have stuff I can do, because like when you approach it, it's like this monolith, right? Like, what the hell am I going to do with a peer-to-peer network? It's like this impenetrable monster, right? And so doing something like Jimmy Song's bootcamp, or his class, was really helpful. It got me up to a point where I could do some projects. And so like the first thing I started doing was I started to, and this is my story of like how I got up to speed in 5 months, how I got to a point where like now I have like a business now that, is a Bitcoin business. It's cool. People pay me in Bitcoin. And so that's how I got up to speed. One thing I did is I after I left his bootcamp, I started writing a little, I tried to figure out how to do initial block download in Python, and how to, go and connect to the network, and, how to request various things from my peers, how to request a block, how to interpret the block, how to request my peers' peers, how to go and visit those, how to do that recursively until I've met everyone in the network, right? Like if you have ever gone to the website BitNodes, which you see every node in the network, that's all they do. They have a Python script that goes and sends, I think it's a get adder message. It's like, hey, peer, tell me your peers. And then it puts them into a little queue, and then it has another kind of, it pulls these things off the queue and it goes and visits them.
Just via the network effects of 6 degrees of separation.
Yeah.
Sort of figure out everybody in the network.
Yeah, you can go and visit everybody. And so like I wrote a little script that does this. And then so once I could kind of do this, I taught some of my friends I met I went to a hackathon. That was also smart. I went to Building on Bitcoin in Portugal. It was friggin' expensive. I had to fly all the way to Portugal for a 2-day conference. But I met a lot of people, and I joined a hackathon team that had some really... We ended up letting everyone onto our team that wanted to, and so we had 13 people, and we made the first Lightning hardware wallet that was ever created.
Oh shit!
And so we won the hackathon. It was like we each got $1,000. Like,
was this the Raspberry Pi Blitz? Or?
No. I mean, it uses an Arduino, and so basically all it does is when you have Lightning, it has this like HSM file. Excuse me. That's just like a secret file that has the secret that signs the channel open, channel close, commitment or the transactions, and signs, I think, routing stuff. I don't totally understand Lightning yet. But all we did is we grabbed that one file, and normally it would be sitting for everyone to see on your computer. So if anybody got like root on your computer, like root permissions for everything, they could see that file. And what we wanted to do is we wanted to move that file from your computer onto a Raspberry Pi that would only communicate over a very simple protocol using a USB wire through the serial port of your computer. And so the idea is like...
Something similar to Trezor, what Trezor's
Yeah, basically the same thing. And so the idea is you just move that secret onto a little thing that only does... It only basically responds to, hey, I want to sign a transaction. And what happens is then you can it's no longer sitting there for anyone who gets control of your computer to see. You'd actually have to also kind of, you have to have physical control of the computer. You couldn't hack in remotely and you'd have to actually get the device and,
plug it in.
And plug it in, yeah. So it's like, it just reduces the surface attack, the attack surface. And, yeah, I mean, it's still, it's like it's the secrets weren't encrypted. It was really basic setup, but it's strictly speaking more secure than using Lightning at the time. So it was pretty cool. We built a little UI. You could pay for stuff. It would go and request the signature from the hardware device. It'd say, hey, do you want to sign this? Yes, no, more information. And you'd hit yes. It's on a $20 piece of hardware, Arduino. Anybody can buy one of these. And then, it would pop up, hey, successful. And you'd see your dick pic on Satoshi's device, right? Yes! Secure dick pics.
That's what it's all about, people, is the secure dick pics. We're just trying to make dick pics secure around the world.
Yeah, so it's a conspiracy at the end of the day. So that's what we built. And so that was another smart thing. I went, and so what I did is I met all these people who were really interested in Bitcoin and also learning. And so then I had like a little class. I called it the Bitcoin Corps, Bitcoin Corps, CORPS, like the Marine Corps. Kind of a joke on like at the time.
I remember that. Yeah.
At the time, everyone was trying to reappropriate the name Bitcoin Core. There was an altcoin named Bitcoin Core to try to like, that's what Bitcoin Core is the name of the open source project, the repository on GitHub. And so it was a stupid joke.
And let's do a little history lesson here. Like Bitcoin Core was brought on by Mike Hearn, who famously rage quit, and
he did.
It was so Bitcoin Core, the name for the repository, was suggested by Mike Hearn and sort of accepted by Gavin Anderson, who isn't really involved in the Bitcoin project.
Unpersoned since then.
Well, one's rage quit, and the other, a lot of people think, is part of the CIA. I don't know if I find
including Satoshi.
Yeah, including Satoshi. It might be the reason why Satoshi left. But
that was like the last message, right?
Yeah.
He's like, hey Satoshi, I'm gonna go talk to the CIA. Okay.
And I'll never be back.
But wire has gone dead.
There's so much fucking consternation towards Bitcoin Core, and the two dudes that created it are not involved with Bitcoin anymore, or I would argue, not aggressively, but they are very obviously opposed to the ethos of Bitcoin and its mission.
Yeah, so I had this stupid joke, and so I just taught this little class.
Talk into the mic, man.
Man, I just want to
trying to get you. I
gesticulate.
get yelled at for audio. This is like the
okay,
biggest
guys.
complaint I
It's
get.
not. It's really hard, man. It's like you move this thing 1 centimeter from your face, and he throws tomatoes at you. He does all kinds of shit, man. He starts turning the music down.
Do I need to bring the pot out to calm you down? So
yeah, I mean,
he's not moving.
I'm
as
a
much?
terrible guest. I'm sorry.
No, you're incredible.
But so what we did was I met all these people and I started making a little class. Basically, everything I learned, I taught them. And what you learn when you try to teach something is you don't know it. Like when you try to teach something, and this was like, so what I was teaching them is just like try to do initial block download in Python, a simple language. Like try to connect to the network. It's called a peer version handshake, right? What you do is you can choose any node in the network, and this is what was like, it was shocking to me, right? Because at our company that was doing the debit and credit card stuff, like the only reason we existed is because we had a CEO that was like the most charismatic dude ever, and he could go walk into a payment processor and convince them that they were fucked if they didn't partner with us.
Yeah.
And then he gets 50% of the equity, and that's the one thing he does, and after that, it's
all up to you guys to build
it. It's then it's got to be built. And so like the great thing about Bitcoin is like, hey, I want to be a part of this network, right? Okay, well, compose a version message. Go find a peer. Okay, go find a peer. Go find their IP, their host name, their port. Everyone's seen one of those before. Now compose a version message. Tell them what version of the software of the protocol you're running, right? Like current versions have certain messages that old versions don't have when they're talking to each other. So it's like, what version of this peer-to-peer network language can I speak? And you tell them, and they'll say, oh, thanks. I'm going to tell you my version, the version I speak, and they send it back. And then you say, okay, I acknowledge that you got my message, Verac, and they send the same. And then your peers, you're talking to each other. And so like compare that to the business development required to get into anything with Visa or MasterCard or any kind of bank or financial institution. It's
cold
like
emails.
My jaw just dropped. Like you got to have 20 years of experience to even be taken seriously. And here it's like, can you work with raw bytes over a socket? Like, or can you download a library off GitHub? Like that's all it takes.
I really like this framing, and I've never heard Bitcoin framed in this way.
That's because I went and got my hands dirty, right? And like I was playing with it on my own, trying to understand it, applying what I learned in Jimmy Song's class, and then I'd go and teach it to my friends, and it's like, well, how would I have the friends I met at this hackathon, right? My normal friends aren't interested in this fucking shit. Only these freaks I met at the hackathon, right? And so it's like, there's like four of them who show up every month or every week. I had it once a week, and we'd do this class. Like one of them's in Portugal, one of them's in London, one of them's in New Zealand. Try to coordinate those time zones.
That sounds terrible.
It's like all over the world. And so, there was this kid in Houston who like drove from Houston to Austin to one of my meetups. Like, what a savage, It's like
a 2-hour drive.
It's a 2-3 hour drive. It's a huge drive, and just for a shitty meetup. I don't run a good meetup, man.
I've heard good things about your meetups.
Okay, yeah. Well, now they're good, but he came in the early days, and so I teach these classes, and like. To your point of like, this is a different way of explaining it. Well, I had to explain this thing I just learned to these people I don't even really know, but we are united by an idea. Mm-hmm. And so it's like, it's a really good way to go about it. It's like, when you learn something, go try to teach it to some other people, because there's a horde of thirsty people out there who want to learn more. And so that's another thing that I did that worked really well. Every week we did this, and it's over 2 months. If you go look, if you want to see what I'm talking about, go to justinmoon.com. That's my website. And I think you'll probably see there are links to my YouTube, and they're just called like Bitcoin network programming videos. It's like 15 hours of content where I was just teaching them all this stuff I was learning, and so that's what happened. So we kind of did that over 2 months, and then after doing this hardware wallet hackathon, I'm like, well, shit, I want to build a hardware wallet, but Arduino's in C++. I don't really like that. It's a simple C++. I like Python. I want to make it in Python, and I went and bought a cold card. And I went and read the firmware. The firmware is written in Python, unbelievably. You don't write firmware in Python. Apparently there's...
Really? Why not?
So it's slow, and you want the fastest thing possible so that you're not waiting around for a signature.
For UI interaction?
Yeah, you want really snappy...
Does that have to do with UI?
They're underpowered. Like Python could do it, but it would take forever. And so what they did is some physicists went and made like a specific version of Python, that could be used to just power the kind of business logic of these hardware applications. And it was very easy to bind in C code that's really fast. So if you have like some cryptography that you want to happen really quickly, you can do that easily. And so who adopted this? Trezor. Trezor's firmware on the Trezor 1, I think, is the second version of their Trezor is written in Python. And so when I discovered this, like, well, shit, I'm going to now learn how to write a firmware in Trezor. And then there was another project called TinyChain written by James O, one of the guys that organized James O'Byrne.
James
yeah.
OB.
He's like your repeat. Yeah, he's like an all-star.
I loved... Big fan of James.
Yeah, so he wrote this thing called...
Another beefy Bitcoin boy.
So he wrote this thing called TinyChain, which I'm sure you probably didn't talk about. He wrote 1,000...
We didn't talk about it.
You did?
We didn't talk
about it. Yeah, I'm sure, yeah, because it's like a little 1,000-line Python program that holds all the main mechanics of Bitcoin. And so it's really cool if you're a programmer, you can go in and see, okay, here's how transactions work. Here's how mining works. Here's how difficulty adjustment works. Here's how the monetary policy works. Here's how the peer-to-peer networking works. And you can get it all on your screen at one time. If you try to go to the Bitcoin C++ source code or even the wiki or anywhere else, you can't get it all. It's like, it's bigger.
You got to go diving.
Yeah, and so he made it, he just compacted it. And so that was a really good learning tool for me. So it's like, okay, well, another thing I want to do is teach people how to... Well, here's the one problem though. It's like a 1,000-line thing, and it's like it's hard to figure out what thread to start pulling to unwind this thing, right?
Yeah.
And that wasn't his goal when he did this. He was to teach himself, right? And if you go through the commit history, he started with something small and built it up, and it worked for him, right? Because he's a core contributor, and so he's also a really sophisticated programmer. And so I was like, okay, well, how would I teach this to somebody? And so what I did is I tried to start making a really stupid version of digital cash, right? Because that's what Bitcoin is. Peer-to-peer electronic digital cash. That's the subtitle of the white paper. And so it's like, okay, what's the dumbest, worst possible digital cash, right? And my solution was something I call PNG coin. It's PNG coin. If you go to my, find me on YouTube, you can see a whole 1 hour dissertation on PNG coin. The way PNG coin works is it's issued by Donald Trump. With his executive order, if you've ever seen him holding up one of his executive orders, and it says, I issue 10 PNG coins to Alice.
Great
right?
meme fodder.
Yeah, it's great meme fodder, and that's why I chose it. And so that's how it's issued, right? And so issuance model is terribly broken. It's very easy to counterfeit these, because all you got to do is go to a meme generator, generate it, and then you get these coins. And so the way they work,
inflate it.
Yeah, and so the way they work is they're just a chain of these transactions. The first one is like a Coinbase transaction in Bitcoin. It's the minting transaction. The way you know it's valid is if it's a picture. They're all PNGs, right? It's a picture of Donald Trump holding up his executive order saying, I give it to Alice, right? And it's a signature, right? So it's it's valid. And so you verify it digitally, and then if Alice wants to transfer it, it's she writes on a piece of paper, I, Alice, give this to Bob, right? And when Bob gets it, he goes and opens the PNG on his computer and says, hey, is my name Bob? Yeah, okay. Is that Alice's signature? Does it say Alice? Like, it's all visual validation. Everything is broken about it. The signatures are physical signatures. It has every problem. It can be double spent. It can be easily counterfeit. The transactions can be easily forged. You rely on a central authority. It has literally every problem a digital cash can have.
But it is the dumbest version.
It's the dumbest version, and that's important because you want to find the simplest version. And then so the next thing we do is something called ECDSA coin. And ECDSA stands for Elliptic Curve Digital Signature Algorithm. And that's how your transactions are signed in Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And so it's fancy math. And this is what you learn in Jimmy Song's class, by the way, how to specifically do this. And so all it does is it just replaces this stupid PNG photograph of physical signatures with a digital signature, which is better in many ways. It's when you make a digital signature for a certain message, like Alice, sending to Bob, it's not easy to go forge it for a different signature, Alice sending to, Mary. And that's very different for physical signatures, right? Because your physical signature is always the same. Mm-hmm. So with digital signatures, you can embed the message you're signing in the signature. Huge, huge improvement. And it's also much more space efficient, right? You don't need a megabyte of space every time. You're like this, you want to transfer a coin that's been transferred 10 times. It doesn't fit in Gmail, right?
Right.
It's terrible. And so we do ECDSA coin, then we do something called bank coin. It has a central validator to eliminate the double spends that are possible in ECDSA coin. Then we do block coin, because the problem with bank coin is you have one validator. Block coin, you have like n validators. You know, let's say 20 of them. Yeah, so it's like
EOS 20.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it is an improvement over one. But then the question is, well, how do you have anyone participate as a validator, right? And you want some sort of a mercenary model where anybody can contribute their resources, and that was the genius of Adam Back and Stoshi.
Hashcash, yeah.
Proof of work, right? And Hal Finney too with his reusable proofs of work. You know, he contributed there. And so the idea is like you give them a difficult computation they have to solve, and that's who gets the next block of who gets to submit the next block of transactions. Because in this sort of block coin model, you have 21, and you just go around the circle, right? But if the number, if it can go to 21, then 20, then 30, then 25, like how are you going to choose who's next? There's no algorithm for that.
Right.
And so what they do is like, well, here, you know, we're going to give you a problem, and we're going to give you a reward if you solve it, and that's proof of work. And so we make a coin that just does this. It's called POW coin. And so the problem with POW coin is inflation. POW for proof of work. The meme, every one of these has like a meme associated with it, right? And so this is like the POW MIA guy. He's like sitting there, you know, the flag that all the vets have. He's sitting there on the guard saying, "Get to work." You know, they're the worst coins. Bank coin is like, you remember the Bitcoin subreddit, like digital or magic internet money, right?
Funny internet money.
Yeah, magic internet money. So it's that, but instead of Bitcoin, it says block coin. This is the stupidest thing. So they all have a stupid meme associated with them. So that's the trick is like, how do you eliminate inflation, right? And so there are two inflation problems, right? There's the local problem, which is what happens if a lot of these miners, proof of work miners, come on very quickly. They'll start, you know, if the difficulty of the problem is fixed, a lot of supply will be created instantly. Just like if, you know, you tried to monetize copper, as Safe describes in his book. Well, if you try to monetize copper, you buy it a lot. The price goes up. As the price goes up, all the silver miners and gold miners will say, all of a sudden,
we should start mining
copper is more, you know, we have reserves that are now profitable. Let's go mine those. They flood the market with new supply. The price collapses, and whoever tried to monetize, you know, just loses their ass.
Yeah.
And so the same problem is present here with this POW coin. And so the solution to this local inflation problem is to introduce difficulty adjustment, which means every
2016 blocks.
Yeah, every unit time in Bitcoin 2016 blocks. Let's make it. Let's make it so like the last unit of time would have taken 10 minutes per block. You know, let's just re-average it, and then so the next unit of blocks might not perfectly hit 10 minutes, but it won't hit 1 minute.
Yeah,
it'll hit 7, 8, 12 minutes. And you avoid the problem where your currency just hyperinflates immediately.
Yeah, I believe the average block time up to this point is like something like between 9.5 and 10
Yeah,
minutes.
because over time, every unit, people more is added to the network. So,
it's a beautiful feedback
since
loop.
you look backwards, it doesn't quite hit 10 minutes. And so difficulty adjustment is a solution to the local problem. Like, how do I prevent a huge a herd of miners entering the network from inflating our coin? But then you still have the global problem, right? If your inflation doesn't go to zero over time, then buyers never have a real incentive to adopt your coin, because they don't have any guarantee that the supply of what they're buying is fixed and that it won't be sort of like, they won't be diluted after the fact, right? And this is something I learned in the startup. It's like, hey, if you get a bunch of equity, like I got a bunch of equity in the startup, and then we started raising money from like iffy VCs who wanted these shitty terms and like created a bunch more stock. It's like, well, now all of a sudden
I'm all diluted here.
I'm diluted. Yeah. So it's like, you want to avoid that. And so I call this like the global inflation problem. You really want in a free market. So this is what we're talking about, a free market for money, right? You want in a free market for money, you have to have your inflation go to zero. Because if your inflation doesn't go to zero, then somebody else will do that. They'll just copy your coin, have the inflation go to zero, and everyone will adopt that.
Right.
Because like it's a strict guarantee that they won't get fucked. And so like if you want to keep inflation, like try it. I'm going to just do what you do and remove it, and then I win. And so like it's clear that that's kind of the solution. And so the next little version of this little, this series of exercises I created was one where you remove this global problem and have the supply capped every 4 years, or every unit time you reduce the subsidy that the miners get until it goes to zero. And of course, this is not my idea. This is Satoshi's idea. And so these two solutions, like it's important to acknowledge that there are two solutions, two different problems, the local and the global inflation problems. And so, this little experiment ends up with like 800 lines of code in Python, really readable. And now you really understand not only how Bitcoin works, but why it works that way, because you started with PNG coin, a stinking pile of shit. A diaper full of shit. Right? And
whatever full depends.
Yeah, right. And you remove the flaws one by one until you arrive at Bitcoin. And so I think it's a great exercise. It obviously helped James O'Byrne, core contributor, because that's where I got the idea from. It helped me. And then so now, these three projects, the hardware wallet, the peer-to-peer networking, and the this digital cash series where we start with PNG coin and build Bitcoin in Python, really simple code. These are the backbone of my class called BUIDL Bootcamp. Sorry, BUIDL Bootcamp is just a little experiment I launched online like a month ago. I just announced like, hey, I want to teach people about Bitcoin. It's free. Sign up here. If you can just write a Python program that can give me the first 100 prime numbers, I'll let you in. I let a lot of people in that couldn't even do it, to be honest. It's just if they look like they tried, I let them in. So 300 people applied, 250 I let in. Basically anybody who seemed like they tried it all, I let in. And it was an amazing experience. Like I think 10% of the cohort was from like Venezuela.
Boss.
In a lot of them from Chile. They have a whole hashtag Spanish Slack channel that is like, I had no idea what's going on in there, but they're
working.
They're working, yeah. they're working. It's great. And so yeah, I mean, a lot of these people have, the videos I post, more people watch them than are in the class.
That's incredible.
And so it's been a really cool experiment. And the idea is I'm just trying to solve and this goes back to like how I got involved. It's like, hey, I encountered this problem. I want to learn Bitcoin programming, and it's friggin' hard, man. It's hard to learn how any of this works. And so I'm like, okay, this is a problem I had. I'm going to solve it. And so to all you freaks out there, like pay attention to what you encounter and then try to solve it. Because there's a lot of people who have that problem now, and there's going to be a hell of a lot more that have that problem in the future, because you're still in the small minority who care enough to listen to the 1 hour point of a podcast.
Right.
With, there aren't many people like you. So solve the problems you encounter. And that's what I did. And it's worked pretty well so far. I mean, we didn't get as much done as I wanted to in the first cohort, and they're kind of pissed at me because I didn't quite finish everything I wanted to, but it's okay. And so next month, starting on November 5th, we're going to have another cohort. It's going to be the second time I've taught all this stuff. It's $500 for a month worth of class, a month worth of stuff, like 15 hours a week. So it's like $10 per hour of stuff you're learning. I mean, like the best thing I probably ever did career-wise is pay $1,000 for this Python programming class, because it was the basis for my entire career. The entire the math degree I got has not really made me any money. The Python class I took has made me a lot of money.
This is something. See, this is why I wanted to bring you on, because it's fascinating. Again, I'm economics background. You're more engineering.
Yeah.
You have found this boot camp. I actually got to where I am today because I quit finance and did a UX design boot camp.
Oh, that's crazy! I didn't know that.
Yeah, so it was similar. It was 16 weeks.
Yeah, the
over
interdisciplinary is really good too.
Yeah.
Like if you can take something you know and then learn something that's different, there aren't many people that do both.
Right. And so that's why I decided to quit. I got a good deal on a boot camp. It was
that's great.
It was over the summer, so it was from like June or July to September, so 2.5 months.
Yeah.
And I spent $2,000. It was the best $2,000 I ever spent in my life.
But freaks, $500 is nothing. Sign up now.
No, seriously, $500 is really nothing.
Dirt cheap.
It really is. But that $2,000, like, it has It has got me to this point.
Yeah.
I would argue
and
vehemently.
I mean, the way I'm approaching it is like, hey, if you're not satisfied, I will refund you. I want to get to the point where you have a job, you're making a lot more money than you used to, you're happier than you used to be. That's what I want my customers to get to that point. And not just for my own sake. It's like, I want that for Bitcoin. We need more devs.
Right, exactly.
We need more devs. Like, there aren't enough.
So
there aren't enough protocol devs. There aren't enough application developers.
When there aren't enough testers. There aren't enough reviewers.
My God, I was just this Lightning residency as a like.
Wait, we're gonna get into that.
Okay, so but there aren't enough. Like, there are going to be so many opportunities, you guys, in the next 5 years. Like, if Bitcoin works, we're gonna have to rebuild the entire financial software system, or not the entire, but a lot
stack.
Of it.
Yeah,
you're gonna so much is gonna be rebuilt. These skills, like, it's not for everyone. I want to say it's like, you shouldn't do it. You already know some other stuff. Like, that's what I'm trying to get here. Yeah.
I think we're attacking the problem from different angles. Like,
exactly.
I do the newsletter in this podcast because I
recognize. So don't learn to program. You already figured out stuff that works for you, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's not for everybody. I'm not like, some people sort of be like, everyone should learn to code. Like, I mean, even like Zuckerberg or something said that.
Well, that's why I took that boot camp and that's why I picked that boot camp specifically, because I was like, all right, it's focused on UX. If I want to learn like front end JavaScript frameworks, I can.
Yeah.
And I realized really quickly, like,
that's not for me.
Development's not for me.
Yeah.
Like, I looked at psychology
it's
and
not
like
for
talking
everybody.
to people and like walking around, and I decided to focus on the UX psychology part of it. But having the option to decide between the two, number one was huge, and then number two, recognizing that, all right, I'm not going to be a developer was like, that's a huge step, because there was that sort of.
But that's a good reason to try it too. So then it's one of the. Like, it's one of the best paying professions, and it doesn't take long to learn. So you should try it and then learn it's not for you. Like, I think everyone should try that. And it's good. I mean, it's a very rational thing to do.
Yeah, and it's okay to learn, but that there is that tripe out there, like, everybody's going to need to program.
Nah,
in the future.
man, it's not true.
It's not for everyone. Man.
Yeah, it's not for everyone. Isn't. But it's for, like, hey, if you are listening and you don't have a fulfilling career, you don't have a job that pays like a lot. Like, you should get a job that pays a lot. You should
aim to. Yes.
You should aim to. Yeah. I mean, unless you want you have something else that you like more, like you're an artist or something, like, sure. But like, there's nothing wrong with going trying to make a bunch of money. Like, it's a good thing. If someone's willing to pay you a bunch of money, it means you're worth a lot and you're helping a lot of people. It's a good thing. And so one of the things at this moment in time, it's very rational to explore programming. And you learn really quickly whether you like it or not, man. Right? Some frustrating shit, I'll tell you that.
Like, I was doing like responsive CSS design. I was like, this is just so fucking boring. I can't do it. I wouldn't be able to do it.
Exactly, yeah. And yeah, I mean, if you're learning, like, I had a tweet, like, we were in Riga, right, for that conference.
That was a fun weekend, by the way.
It was crazy.
It was incredible to meet you there, by the way.
Yeah,
we had a fun airport trip on the way back.
Yeah, that was amazing. I followed Jameson Lopp through airport security. Talk about a master course on OPSEC. I was like, hey, what are you doing on your phone there? I'm taking notes. Okay, locking down the password manager. Okay.
That was a fun journey back to the States.
Yeah,
we yelled at customs, or I yelled at customs while you blew past me.
Oh yeah, that was great. To be honest, I did lie a little bit about when I'm taking off. It was like, my flight was in 3 hours. I told them it was in 2. They let me pass the entire line. Marty stayed in the back and was tweeting nasty things about JFK for the next 30 minutes.
It's deplorable. It's really that is the first thing that foreigners see when they come to New York.
I spent a lot of time in Beijing, and like, a lot of New York City is like shittier than Beijing at this point, especially the subways.
It's dirty
and
as
the
fuck,
airport.
Man.
Yeah, it's rough. What are we talking about?
We were getting on how you can find your way to help out, and you can notice that you might not be a good programmer, but you can contribute in different ways.
And so that's what I did. Is like, I had a problem. I wanted to learn how to do this stuff. I wanted to get really good. Like, I wanted to get to the point where I understood the leading edge. And I understood how to make a really novel, important contribution, and it's really hard to get there. So I found one resource that really helped. I mean, Mastering Bitcoin is like the most basic one. That's really great. And then the other thing was Jimmy Song's Bootcamp, but it's really expensive. It's like $4,000 for 2 days. It's $3,000 or $4,000 depending on when you sign up, and then you usually have to travel. But it's worth it. Like, it is worth it. I'm so glad I did it. It was one of the best things I ever did in my life. He's teaching a class in Austin where I live. If you live in Austin, take the class. Like, It's one of the best things I ever did if you're serious about this. And so
And he starts out like from scratch to building a wallet, correct?
kind of. It's like enough to create and sign a transaction, doing all the math yourself.
Okay.
Which is pretty cool.
Yeah, because you can literally construct Bitcoin transactions by hand.
Yeah, and you do the math that makes it impossible for someone else. Sorry, you do the math that makes it impossible for someone else to steal your coins. I've had a little whiskey now, so I can't describe this sort of thing in detail, but it's really great. And then so yeah, that's what I wanted to get good at this, and so I took everything that was available, and then I started kind of teaching my own stuff to people, and there were only a handful that were willing to take it, but it was the best thing out there, so they showed up every week. And then I did this BUIDL Bootcamp. This was like this culmination of these 3 different little things I did, and it's a 1-month class, and it's been really cool. Like, I last week I helped one of the first people who was in my initial classes get a Bitcoin programming contract. So he made about a Bitcoin or something.
Hell yeah!
Building a prototype of a UI for a mining pool, and so it's really cool. Like, this is just random guy, Portuguese guy, shows up every time I teach something. Like, me and him wrote the UI for the first Lightning hardware wallet ever. Me and him were the 2 main people, plus a designer, were the ones that wrote the UI for this. So it was like, you
guys have an emotional.
I love this guy, man. I love this guy. I want to get him paid as much as possible.
And he's got a
gig
Bitcoin
now. I'm gonna
job.
get him more gigs. And so that's where this little BUIDL Bootcamp is like. So I offered one for free, and now I'm just iterating, trying to figure out what to do next. Like, what I really want to do is find a way to offer it for free, and then be able to make a bunch of money myself somehow. Mm-hmm. And so,
as we all would like to do.
Yeah, and that's like, if your business doesn't make money, it's not going to be a business for long. You're going to be working at McDonald's here pretty soon. You gotta be self-sufficient. And so there's a really cool thing called Insight. There's a few. One's called Insight Data Science. Another one called Recurse Center. It used to be called Hacker School. There's another one called Lambda School. There are these programs that teach programming that are in a way that's free to the students, and then they monetize with a hiring program. And so they basically, because being a software recruiter is one of the most absurdly profitable things you can do.
Yeah.
You get like 20% of first year salary. Right, and these are mostly salespeople who don't understand anything about Bitcoin. They're just so pushy or not Bitcoin software. They're just so pushy they can get people hired. They have no idea
what's going on, dude.
Yeah, and so it'll be really cool if I can take advantage of this market inefficiency, where it's so hard to find a good dev, and I can get paid by exploiting this market inefficiency by providing good developers, but I can do it in a way that's free to the developers. So like, hey, if you want to try Bitcoin programming, if you're a good programmer and you want to try it, it's free, and it's kind of risk. There's not a lot of risk associated with it. And so that's where I want to get in like 6 months. But I have to.
Justin Moon, are you trying to create a credentials system right now?
No, man.
Jesus Christ.
Not a credential. It's just enough. It's just enough to get someone hired.
No.
It's like, because a credential at the end of the day, it's like, no sophisticated employer gives a shit.
Right?
They don't.
Well,
there's nothing. No one's looked at my math degree ever.
No. Exactly. So, and this is a funny, actually.
And I did honors. I did the fucking honors program. Do you have any idea how much I sweat and how much I bled for this?
But pertaining to open source, free and open source software projects in particular, this is an interesting topic, credentials in particular. So you were mentioning James O.B. earlier. Mm-hmm. James O.B. and I have bonded over the fact that we're both in Drupal in the past. So he was a Drupal developer, and the company that I used to work for that I was describing earlier, where we outsourced development services in Latin America, that's what I was selling was Drupal resources.
Oh, so you know all about this shit.
Yes. Oh, hell yeah. And there is like a big thing in Drupal in particular is this one company, Acquia, which does a lot of the hosting services and a lot of the development consultation, if you will, and they have a certification process where you become a Drupal certified developer via Acquia.
Yeah, I've seen that on resumes.
And that is like it's a cause of much consternation in the Drupal community because like, who is Acquia to give credentials in the world. Like, this is an open source project. Like, who is Acquia to credential people? And it's an interesting topic that should be thought about thoroughly for Bitcoin in particular, because we will run into similar problems in the future.
Yeah.
And
I mean, it's a signaling problem, right? It's like, how do I know you're good?
You're right.
Like, what's the cheapest way for you? Like, if you are good, it's really hard, right? That's why recruiters exist. If you are good, well, the cheapest thing you can do is hire a recruiter to sell your services for you, because it's like, you're probably an introvert if you're a good programmer. You're probably conflict averse. You probably don't like salary negotiations. So you basically give up a percentage of your, you don't give up your own salary, but you make it such that the market takes what you would get as salary and gives it to recruiters.
Right.
But you yourself don't make a sacrifice, but because everybody acting in unison makes it such that these recruiters exact this huge fee.
25% in some cases.
Huge,
of the salary, of the base salary.
Yeah, it's insane. And so all because they don't want to negotiate, right? And so it's a tough problem. Like, how do you signal that how do you communicate that you're good? And that's one thing open source is really good at. It's like, hey, if you got a couple of non-trivial commits into Bitcoin Core, you are good. Right? If you got a couple non-trivial commits into Rust Bitcoin, Rust Lightning, into C Lightning, into LND, like, we have this little bit more of an ecosystem now, N Bitcoin, BTC Pay Server. Like, one of the beautiful things is there aren't many developers who've made a non-trivial commit. Commit is just like a change in Git. This is the collaboration tool we use as programmers.
It's the nomenclature for that particular app.
Exactly. And so there aren't many who've done that. And so if you are one, you are really valuable to anybody who knows anything about this space. And so, I want to, that's my kind of goal right now, is I want to become one of these people, because I'm still not actually. I've been teaching my silly classes, and I haven't actually contributed anything yet.
What would you want to contribute if you could?
I mean,
where would you want to help out?
That's a good question.
Like, de-alienating.
I mean, to be honest, I want to. So Python Python is a programming language. It's like a really simple programming language, and it's really easy to read the code. Some programming languages, the code is really hard to read. And the thing Python did, and why it's the most popular language in the world now, is it had a emphasis on readability. So when you look at the code, you can understand what it does.
Yep.
It's not cryptic like code kind of used to be. And so Python's great, but we don't actually have a really good Bitcoin library for Python right now. We have some, like Jeff Garzik made one that's now maintained by Peter Todd, and it's really useful.
Peter Todd took over Jeff Garzik's?
Yeah, he did. I mean, he took one for the team, man.
Really?
Hallelujah.
Interesting.
And so he maintains it now, but it's not really actively developed. It doesn't, when you read it, it doesn't look like Python code. It looks like a Java developer or something wrote it. Like, it's not best practices, so to speak. And there are some other ones, like PyCoin's another one, but there's not a really great Python library. And so that's one of my ambitions with this bootcamp is we're going to be doing projects where we want a general purpose library that you can do all these different things, like derive, your private keys, plug into the peer-to-peer network, talk to Bitcoin D, the Bitcoin, the core Bitcoin server that runs on your Bitcoin full node. All these different things. It'd be great if we had one Python library that could do all of these things. And it kind of it somewhat exists, but not great. And so that's my ambition at the moment, is I want to either create or help create something like this.
That sounds incredible, and it's a great ambition to have.
It would be cool. I mean,
thank you for taking on.
If I didn't have drinks, I wouldn't admit that I want to do this.
See, that's the magic potion here at Marty, at
fucker.
Tales from the Crypt. It's the only way I get you smart people to open up is by getting you drunk as hell.
No, it's good.
But seriously,
so that's one thing I'd like to do, and one of the cool things about the bootcamp.
Wait, let me talk. You've been talking for we've been podcasting for an hour and 23 minutes. You've been talking for an hour and 20 minutes. Which I love, and I think the freaks are going to love as well. But I want to
disagree, man. I can't disagree. I want to hit you right now, but you're right.
But I want to interject just to give you a sense
this
of.
Hasn't been a conversation. I've just been.
I love it. I love it. I want to give you a sense of reinforcement that I love that you're ambitious to attack a goal as ambitious as this, even like coming. That's why I wanted to bring you on, because you came into Bitcoin like 6-8 months ago.
5 months
and
ago.
the fact that you have
ago.
the fucking balls, the gall to step up, create like a boot camp, start educating people. Who the fuck are you, Justin?
Dude, I'm nobody, man.
Who the fuck are you?
I'm taking over.
Interviewing or educating people about Bitcoin development. But you know
Dude,
what?
I'm talking at this conference tomorrow, and I got the worst imposter syndrome ever. These people have been around for 5 years.
But that's the beauty of it all. Once you get over the imposter syndrome and you notice, hey, I know I can contribute.
It was funny last night.
Wait. I'm not done talking yet, Justin.
I got no
not
social
done
niceties.
Yet. What I wanted to say is I think you're a great example of somebody who does not give a fuck about the imposter syndrome and is proving that this is a meritocracy.
Yeah.
Yes, you've only been in this space for 6 months, but what you're saying makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
It seems like you really have a firm understanding when it comes to a development standpoint, and then the Bitcoin ethos, it seems like it rubbed off on you right away. So, hey, somebody who's been around for like 6-7 years, it's like you probably know more than me, and I've been around here for a while from like a development perspective.
Yeah, man. One of the funny things that you see is like people bragging about when they first heard of Bitcoin, they want to push the date up as far as possible, and it's like, I kind of have the opposite point of view. It's like, I'm really impressed with people who say I got involved recently. And like this guy, I forget it's like Rene Picard or something. Mm-hmm. He's really good. You should have him on. He's a cool German guy. He makes a bunch of interesting like Lightning, how to do XYZ simple thing in Lightning on YouTube. And he's really, nice guy. And he just got involved very recently, pretty similar to me. And like, I really like this is like, hey, got involved very recently, like me, has only lost money buying this goddamn BTC coin, right? It's like you can trust our motives. Like, hey, don't trust me, but know one thing: I've only lost money buying this fucking internet coin of yours.
This funny internet money.
Yeah, exactly.
Magic internet money.
And so, I mean, like, I hope that norm goes away. To be honest, because I think it's kind of stupid. Like, who cares when you.
Right?
Like, what have you done? Like,
exactly. What have you done for me lately?
And not that doing anything publicly is the important thing. Like, hey, if you bought coins in 2010 and still have the private keys, hats off, man. You are an epic G. I would have, I am so glad I didn't buy coins 5 years ago, because there's not a chance in hell I still have that private key. I would have lost that shit, and I wouldn't be able to sleep at night. And so to the people who did, and their hodling has sort of held up Bitcoin because they had the private keys. They could have sold in 90% down bear markets, and they didn't. That's one of the reasons.
Not even 90% bear markets. You're talking about like 15x bull markets that could have sold, and they didn't.
Yeah. They didn't sell on the top. They didn't sell the top, and they didn't sell the bottom either. Like, I'm not trying to say those people aren't really important.
Bring that mic closer to your face, Justin. Okay. I'm gonna have to yell at you.
I don't want to kiss this thing. I mean, like, who knows where Lightning Claw's lips have been? Let's be honest.
That microphone's been all over. All right, it's a dirty mic. But no, so let's segue what we've been talking to, like how excited you are about building this and hoping for the potential in the future to contribute in a meaningful way to what you saw today. Like, what the hell is being built?
Yeah,
like, what happened at this residency? I
mean, today was like mixed emotions, because like I got in recently, right? And as a specific decision, I decided not to learn anything about Lightning, because I wanted to learn about Bitcoin first. And then all of a sudden this residency pops up, and it's like, God, this looks perfect. I want to do this. But I've clearly been ignoring Lightning. Like, I don't run a channel. I haven't made anything.
I have a confession to make. I had a very similar path to Lightning, where I'm like, hey, I'm not technically astute enough to understand what's going on. I trust the vision, because I truly believe Bitcoin's going to scale on second and third layers. So it makes sense to me from a basic design level. Mm-hmm. But when you get into the nitty-gritty of Lightning, I'm pretty ignorant.
Yeah, and like, so that's what I was like, hey, I'm just going to focus on the basics. I encountered a problem of a lack of educational resources, so I'm going to solve that problem. And it would be a waste of time for me to learn about Lightning, because like, I want to learn the basics first and teach that. And so then the residency comes along. I apply, and of course my application's total shit because I haven't actually, been working on this at all. And so,
what was your idea to build? Didn't they ask?
So my idea was dope. Like, let's be honest. So James and John, my idea should have made up for it, guys. So the Lime and the Bird scooters? Do they have this in New York?
Yes.
Yeah, the taxi
they're
drivers.
They're not as popular here.
Yeah, they're huge in Austin, in where I live, in California. They're the shared scooters that, they're like kind of Uber, but a scooter. And so I wanted to build a lightning-powered scooter like that, shared scooter, that you'd pay for kind of like by the,
machine payable.
Every 100 yards you pay for your scooter, right? And it would be locked, and you'd have to unlock it by, funding kind of a channel between you and the scooter, right?
Well, so this is what the DAO wanted to do. This is going to be the first app from the DAO.
Oh, this is bad.
Right? No, well, it's not bad. This is the point I've been trying to make all week. This is the fourth podcast I've recorded this week. I think in every podcast I've recorded this week, I brought up this point. Like, Bitcoin is proving that over time, you will be able to build what was once thought to need a innate native token to fulfill a certain use case. That'll be enabled on top of Bitcoin.
And a fancy programming language embedded in your coin.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So Bitcoin's proving that.
Yeah, exactly. So, that was Slock.it or whatever, right?
Slock it, baby. Stephen the Tool.
Oh, my God. Stephen the Tool. Never a better nickname ever.
Right?
I remember that. Like, this was when I was interested in Ethereum pre-DAO. And so...
That's what Slock it was. It was a company to do what you just described, basically.
Yeah, I remember they were like Airbnb and stuff.
Airbnb for like personal property, for like bikes, scooters. Like, hey, you can unlock it.
So that was my idea. I thought it was pretty cool. Like, I went and researched the idea. I hope James and John... I'm kidding. So, like, that was the idea was, I think it was pretty interesting, and it would have been a really cool demo. But then a German guy went and built this thing, but with a bike.
Yeah, Matthias, I wrote about it in the Bent. Last week.
Yeah. So, so maybe James and John were right. I was behind the curve. But I think it would have been pretty cool. And so, but again, I didn't know anything about Lightning. So when the residency came around, I applied and of course was rejected because it's like, I'm clearly ignoring it, right? Like, it's clear from my application, I'm ignoring it because I am. And so, but yeah, like, you got to look, if you want to do anything, here's the thing that Bitcoin people fuck up on. They get involved in everything and then you don't finish anything.
Right.
And so that's, I would, like, so yeah, today I see the amazing things people built and I'm like, oh my God, FOMO, I missed out. I really did. But like, hey, I don't think, like, I want to go back and relive my life,
Justin,
so I would have done
so
just
early.
enough.
It's
right?
so early, Justin.
But you didn't see these demos, man.
All right, so walk us through what happened.
That room was one of the most impressive groups of people I've ever been around.
We're 3 hours post this demonstration day, so walk us through.
Yeah, my diaper is full right now. It is.
We're actually going to need to take a 10-minute intermission. I'm going to have to change Justin's diaper.
Get a shovel. So, yeah.
So I saw Pierre. So you were saying, like, we're going to have to rebuild our whole financial system from scratch. I think what Pierre's building with Excel is very exciting.
Yeah, it's really interesting. It's
very boring, but it's very applicable.
Well, it's cool. This is to interdisciplinary ability, right? Like, you're a finance guy, went and learned UX. You're a finance guy, went and learned UX design. Originally I was interested in all kinds of different shit. Went and got a math degree, went and learned a program, this interdisciplinary stuff, went and started a school, basically. Like, having a couple different perspectives is valid. Pierre is also like this. He's a CPA,
right,
by training, right? Yeah. Went and learned programming, learned basic Python, like I'm trying to teach my students, right?
Smart as shit, man.
And then he went and learned C++. He's been learning like C++ to like he like is in some of these pull requests on Bitcoin Core as basic stuff, but like is writing, has a podcast, is writing Medium articles that are good. And so what does an interdisciplinary person like that produce? He produces something no one else would. An Excel plugin that you download, like it's a one-click installation of a .exe file, just like, everything you download on a Windows computer, right? And most people use Windows. Programmers don't use Windows, but like most people do use Windows. Yeah. And so Pierre has the insight to see this. He makes a one-click thing that makes a new tab on your Excel.
Makes a new sheet on your Excel.
Yeah, well, it's like on the top you have like an LND.
Oh yes, it's like if you're gonna pull data from Bloomberg.
And you hit it, and then you hit like make it populate the sheet, and then it spawns up like 5 of these things, right? And it has like your channels, your payments, your invoices, and it basically is like a really direct, it's a verbose UI. It doesn't like. And this is another thing he's so smart with. He doesn't make it like really usable and hide details. He puts every detail out there because we're still at the point where anybody who's going to try this is
going to make all the mistakes.
Well, and they're willing. They want to see how it works. Mm-hmm. They're not like someone who's going to buy anything because you can't buy anything with Lightning yet. It's like you can buy Nick Carter's FUD dice, right? That's about it. And so, you got some? He's got some. Like 6 inches from where his hand was sitting, he has FUD dice. Look at this.
The FUD of the day is high fees. Not really applicable to today's environment.
That's the problem with FUD dice is they quickly become history.
Well, Nick tweeted out today. He rolled it and like landed on volatile. It was like, I missed the days, and I was like, I tweeted this like 3 days ago. The same thing. That's the funny thing about the FUD dice in particular. They're very, very fun desk game. You're bored at your desk. Start rolling the FUD dice. Look at a little FUD. Do a little thought experiment and how you refute that FUD, and then you go on with your workday. It's a nice little work experiment.
Yeah, so I mean that was a good thing about Pierre is he went and made this LND UI in Excel, and you see everything, and it's like even now I haven't seen such a clear visual printout of what's happening in your Lightning node, and so it's really cool. He made all this, and he went and did all this C# programming that he doesn't normally do. And so that was one of the really cool things. I mean, there were a bunch of them. There was like...
BitMEX came out. They were going to try and integrate Lightning in some way. There was a BitMEX worker there, correct?
Yeah, there was a BitMEX guy there. He had a demo of like actually depositing testnet coins into BitMEX's testnet UI, like testnet instance of their, where the developers test out new features. Amazing. And of course, like it's not something they're going to be doing within the next year, I guarantee you. But like in the future, maybe this will be a thing. And so they're way out ahead of the curve. And, there was...
Christian Decker announced a testnet or something?
Yeah, he announced like a really, really awesome testing tool, which I learned stuff that will go into my class from him there. Like, honestly, he had like these cool printouts of what is going on with a little like network of test C Lightning nodes that's, to test multi-hop payments across multiple channels. It's like a little graph of which nodes are connected to which, and so clearly this multi-hop payment, they're not connected, right? It's like a cool UI he made. There was some things to make like Chrome extensions that would talk to Lightning, and so you wouldn't have to actually copy the invoice that you're given, like that big string, and paste it into a wallet somewhere. And the craziest thing about the Lightning Hack Day is like I was there, and I think. Like I expected it to go on. I thought I wasn't going to see. I thought I was going to see half because I was going to come here talk to you, and then it ended. And I was like, "Well, what about the rest of the people?" And they're like, "Oh, those are all the mentors." And I was like, "You're shitting me?" Because I seen these people usernames, but I don't know them in real life. And it's like Jack Mahlers was there, Elaine was there. I forget what her last name is.
Elaine,
yeah, she's great. And there's all these like great, Lightning Koala, all these great Alex Bosworth, they're all there, and so I was like, wow, this is like all the Lightning talent in the world, like it's really cool. So I mean, the thing that it's the quality of the people, and like when I was walking over here, you gave me a suggestion for a pizza place to go to, and I just completely walked right past it because I was thinking about this stuff, and so. So the thing about Lightning that's so interesting to me is I've had a couple drinks, right? And I've stopped making sense as the the record you're playing at the moment says. It's the Talking Heads.
But Talking Heads, Stop Making Sense live album on right now.
Oh, it's one of the best. The DVD is also good.
It's very good.
Yeah. So the thing that strikes me is that Bitcoin has the same. Lightning and Bitcoin share one property, and it's like one of these things where it's like, this doesn't work unless everyone uses it.
Right.
And then it works really, really well. And so like Lightning has another, because like right now, like there was one of the people who, it's like they couldn't get their channel, the routing for their channels to work quite right. And especially in the test version, it's like hard to find the channels that are actually working or whatever. Again, I don't really know Lightning, so I'm kind of waving my hands. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, hey, this works if we all use it.
Right. Well, that's the beauty of it.
This is so the
beautiful incentive system.
My highlight of the day too was also, so like the company I worked at was like programmable money on these like debit and credit cards, right? It's like an API for issuing these. What we do is like usually it takes 6-9 months to spin up a card program because you have to find an issuing bank, and we would just automate all that for you, all that regulatory compliance. And so I know Visa. I know MasterCard. And today, Jameson Loff had a great tweet. Visa was tweeting out, was the CEO.
We'd be open to crypto.
Yeah, he's
We'd be open to it.
Well, we want to be in the middle. Whatever they're spending, we want to be in the middle. And I know that feeling because that was our business model at my last company. We're the house. Whatever currency you pay on, we're
gonna take a little snippet.
We're gonna take that interchange, that 2% extortion. That's the word I was looking for earlier. Merchant extortion, right?
Really?
And like that was our business model. Hey guys, I'm not a true cypherpunk. Like I did that. It's true. But listen. So he tweeted, he retweeted this guy, and he's like, hey, we're deprecating the middle. Jameson Lobbs is like,
yeah,
we are deprecating the middle.
Deprecating was such a perfect word.
Because I've been in the middle. Like, I know that it's this phenomenal business model. It's like they have this great, regulatory stronghold. I think Visa and MasterCard have both 10x'd their stock market valuations in the last 10 years. These have been really profitable companies because they kind of have, these legal monopolies. It's like they're just protected. It's not, you can't really get at them. And so,
you're not going to start a
merchant
credit card company.
Yeah, exactly.
These days.
Exactly. So it's like I see that in Bitcoin. It's like it's in Lightning in particular, because if Lightning works and everyone can just point their camera at the cash register and they're done, if it works to that degree, merchants are going to be, because you have to think about it economically. It's like
they save that 2%.
Of course, these cards aren't.
Is it a 10x improvement? That's what everybody says. It needs to be a 10x improvement to the current system. Do you believe it's a 10x improvement?
What I believe is
from a holistic experience, from the user experience to the merchant experience.
I'm not going to answer that question. I believe that merchants will be very happy to adopt it if they can get away with it.
Mm-hmm.
Because they get to save 2% on every transaction. And people who are accepting 2% is a lot for someone accepting storefront credit card transactions. It's not a 2% change in what kind of money they make. It's like 20 or 50%.
Yeah.
These people have very low
margins.
Margins, yeah. They have thank God. Yeah. See, I'm not
thin margins.
Yeah, they have very thin margins, and so a 2% gain is huge.
Yeah.
Because that really cuts into what if their margin Walmart's margin is 1% or something. Mm-hmm.
Amazon's even Amazon is completely subsidized by their web services.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so boy, is Amazon going to find a thing where not only are the fees gone, but they're probably a huge routing node and have a bunch of routing nodes because they know AWS. They're as good at networking as anybody in the world.
Right.
They're going to have a profitable business running Lightning nodes. And so they make money off this.
Contributing to this.
Instead of being extorted, they make money. They're going to be really happy to adopt this.
Holy shit.
And merchants are going to be that's why I almost don't want to say it, but goddamn, Square's in a good spot right now. They can just turn this.
Hey, They sponsor the pod. Shout out to Cash App, our sponsor.
Seriously, go buy Bitcoin on Cash App.
We don't use the other apps anymore.
These are good people. These are God-fearing people.
God-fearing.
These are good God-fearing people. Man, Square is legit. And I worked with them. Like, I remember the guy from Square getting out of the big like fancy Escalade he was driving. This guy was a baller. Coming into our shitty office on it's like the worst Soma in San Francisco, where people shit on the streets. That's where our office was. And he's coming into our office, and we had like this meeting with him. So like, you know, and that's the Square Cash card, right?
Yeah.
Like, that's where it started.
I've said this before. Square can become one of the most important Bitcoin companies in the world, I think, just because of their ability to form-fit Bitcoin functionality on their proof-of-sales system.
They're close already, to be honest, man. Like, when Fidelity launched here recently, I was like, this company gets it. You know, they get what Bitcoin is. Apparently, they've been mining for a couple of years, even though that's like a stupid thing to do, but like, now they're sophisticated, right? Yeah.
They were selling goods in their cafeteria for Bitcoin, and people learned that Bitcoin at the protocol level was a little slow.
Yeah, it's terrible for a cafeteria, right? And this is like a lot of quote unquote Bitcoin people, like Bitcoin forkers, still don't get this. Like, it's shit for merchants. Right? It's a nightmare. Like, don't deny it.
Merchants or a user, like, if you really as a user want to know that your Bitcoin transaction went through.
Yeah, they're receiving. That's important.
Maybe didn't get picked up on a chain that got overwritten after 2 or 3 blocks. Like, waiting, like, you're supposed to wait for 6 confirmations to know that your Bitcoin has successfully gone through with a certain amount of certainty.
What kind of storefront wants to keep their customers around for a goddamn hour?
Right?
In the average case.
It
like
just
90 minutes or 2 hours in the worst case.
Yeah.
Like, I was programming yesterday, and there was like a block that was like, I was testing the mainnet transactions for my BTC Pay server for my class. Amazing project, by the way. And it was like, it hadn't been a block in 45 minutes. Like, it happens.
Yeah. No, and that's
I thought I fucked up, but no.
No, and that's why seeing Lightning develop and proliferate and getting people like you excited to build on top of it is very encouraging.
Yeah.
Because that's one of Bitcoin's biggest hurdles, scaling. And that's been the biggest debate for the last 5 years is, are we going to scale this via raising the block size, or are we going to push it to second layers?
And it's a debate I completely missed, which is kind of a blessing, to be honest.
Yeah, it was pretty...
I hear it was terrible.
It was tedious, man. It was very tedious.
Yeah, no.
Still is. It still is to a certain extent.
So I had this great like Twitter conversation with a guy. I had some shit post about why Bitcoin's like really good or something. I don't even remember. But a guy was like, hey, real talk, were you always into Bitcoin? And I kind of told us, like, no, not really. I was into Ethereum for years beforehand. And we were kind of going back and forth. And like and this guy's like has the word DApp in his profile, right?
Mm-hmm.
He's a huffer. Let's be honest. He's a huffer. And so, but he was like, basically what he was saying is like, you know, it would be really cool to be building atop a protocol that's simple.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I was kind of getting him on, is like, we weren't debating, we were just sharing. It was like it was like a good, honest interaction. And he was like, yeah, you know, that would be really great. You know, Ethereum's never going to be able to communicate or compete with Bitcoin as money because it doesn't focus on that.
Right.
And he's like, yeah, I mean, I learned this because I thought, you know, the reasons. And yeah, I really understand why having a simple protocol that does one thing extremely well and an important thing, money, maybe one of the most important things. And so he was really kind of agreeing there. And that was interesting. It was like, hey, this guy knows what he's talking about. He knows about dApps. He's built more of them than I have. And he was like, yeah, I mean, I'm starting to come back to the whole, let's just have a simple money token.
Right.
And it's cool because you can't seize it. Right? Like, that's the really great thing about Bitcoin that gold didn't have, is that you can't seize it.
It's the beauty and the simplicity, too. That's one thing I've been parroting, and that's a huge theme of this podcast, is like you said, Bitcoin only needs to do one thing extremely well.
It's got, like, the most insane uptime. Like, you know, there's been, like, tens of blocks where there's something been wrong on Bitcoin. How many, like, 5 or 6 blocks have confirmed while we're talking here? It's just or probably about 30 blocks.
We're almost 2 hours in.
Okay.
Yeah.
So,
potentially 20.
It's cool when you sit back and it's like, hey, I was just engaged in something. All the while.
12, not 20. I'm drunk.
I'm drunk. I didn't catch that. I got a math degree. It's cool when you zoom out and say, hey, Bitcoin's been confirming all this time.
Right?
That helps me sleep at night.
Well, the concept, that's what I talked about in the newsletter today, too, for the Friday light newsletter, was Bitcoin as a living organism. And I think Ralph Merkel put it best. Like, it copies itself. It replicates its DNA every 10 minutes.
It's amazing.
Geographically dispersed. Like there could be a nuclear war on one side of the world and Bitcoin could survive because it's being kept alive. And viewing Bitcoin and the humans that value it as money as a symbiotic relationship, as us both keeping each other sort of alive. Bitcoin's not keeping us alive by any means, but there's a symbiotic relationship there. Where
money does.
Bitcoin, yes.
Yeah, you need money
Bitcoin
to maintain.
provides us with the sound money, and in return, we keep Bitcoin alive.
Exactly. I mean, money, I think everyone underestimates the importance of money. Like, if you
I don't
try
think
to
they
run
underestimate the importance of money. I just don't think most people understand what money is.
I think both, man. I don't you look at a society that doesn't have money. Show me one that has heating.
Right.
Like it's, if you don't, civilizations without the institution of money, generally,
Collapse.
don't have anything. They don't have medicine. They don't have heating. They don't have indoor
Clean
lighting.
water. Yeah.
They don't have any of these, these things we neglect. Like they travel at the speed of human walking or horses. Like they can't fly across the country like I did to come here for like $200.
Right.
Money's really important, and I think better money is possible, and that's something that I'm really learning. Better money is It's happening. It's happening, yeah. And
that's why I love about Bitcoin too, is making people think about this. And that, I don't know if you've seen
Bitcoin. Hey, I heard a guy say this once. A wise man once said, "We're not changing Bitcoin so much as Bitcoin is changing us."
A very wise man.
A wise man said that.
A very wise man once said that.
Very wise man.
Many times.
Yeah.
But one of my favorite tweets about Bitcoin of all time comes from Neil Woodfine. Shout out Neil. If Bitcoin is successful, it will usher in the next enlightenment because it makes people think about these hard pressing issues and these complex topics like distributed systems, economics, money, even psychology. Like you have to dive into
incentives.
When you get to the bottom of it, you jump into game theory, incentives, psychology. At the end of the day, it's all encompassing because you have to know cryptography, math, the game theory, which is psychology.
Exactly.
You have to be analytical. You have to be sort of up to speed with what's going on with the network at what time and adapting to the information as it's coming in.
So one of the really I forgot what I was going to say. Sorry. Completely lost my train of thought.
That'll happen after you polish off like a half a liter of whiskey.
Yeah.
Between two people. It was fun.
Yeah, no, it was a good podcast. I mean, I'm just really struck by the what I was going to say is I was in kind of a reverie there. So I got it. So so I come here to New York, right? And you're walking around, like the streets of New York are the best for people watching. And so I'm walking around, going to this I went grab dinner last night when I came just by myself. Then went to the chain code thing. You're just walking around the streets, right, going to the subway and stuff. And it's like, man, these people don't know.
They don't know.
They don't know about Bitcoin yet.
That's one of my favorite knocks on Ethereum is whenever I'm talking to like an Ethereum dev or somebody and we're walking around the streets of New York City, I'm like, look around. How many of these people can use a MetaMask wallet?
Yeah.
How many of these people even know what a DApp is? How many people could buy Ethereum, convert it into a token, and then use it in a DApp?
Yeah. Or it's not that they use it, it's that they want to use it. You have to have the motivation to.
Yes.
Like that's any of these things. It's like you got to be a white paper reader to actually buy what they're selling. And Bitcoin, meanwhile, it's like, hey, man, in a Bitcoin world, this is another interesting thing that kind of like Safe talks about the most, Safety with the Bitcoin standard. It's like, well, what will happen to... One of the things I don't like is like, it seems like the game is rigged against the common man, because to manage your money intelligently, you have to like think about tax arbitrage, and you have to think about corporate earnings and interest rates and all these things. And it's like, well, okay, so that's like a rigging of the game in favor of the guy who knows what's up. But like in a Bitcoin world, just sitting on your money no longer means losing 5% a year that you could have made on the stock market and going from rich to poor over the course of a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
It means you just like grow at the speed of the economy, and you basically maintain your stature.
Yeah.
And I think that's really appealing to have a simple way for the common man to retain their wealth, which is just like a deflationary currency. Like that seems really moral to me.
Right?
It seems like
that's why
seems like the common guy or girl doesn't need to like know the latest hustle in order to have enough money to like retire at a reasonable age and give their kids a good life.
Life's hard enough.
Exactly.
And blue collar people,
when it's not
especially.
Just hard, it's the complication. It's like, I mean, I just think modern life is very, it's a game that's really skewed to the people with high IQs, right? Like if you can handle a bunch of this complexity, that's like the definition of a high IQ. You're doing well. It's like, well, if you're somebody whose mind doesn't work that way and there's something wrong with that, you're really in trouble. And so it's like the cognitive elite, so to speak, have they're very favored in a fiat system. The cognitive elite are less favored in a Bitcoin system, I think, because they don't you
don't have to be too cognitive to say, hey, I'm going to stash away
gonna sit, man.
100 Satoshis per paycheck
and
or something like that.
In the future, we'll find better ways so that people don't have to sit on their seed wallets and seed phrases and private keys and all these things that the so-called cognitive elite are going to be a little better at managing. We'll find simpler ways like Cash App. I mean, for the average guy, like go buy a couple coins on Cash App and you're going to be in pretty good shape, man. If you're like a plumber.
Yeah, that's
a good thing for you to do, and just keep track of that login, install 1Password. You're going to be in really good shape, and so I think that's really that's to me one of the really inspiring things. That's like a word I almost puke when I say, but inspiring things. Like it's a good thing about Bitcoin that like a Bitcoin world I think would be better on the common guy, a common man,
right,
a common girl. Like I think.
This podcast started at the mecca of the common man, Barstool Sports, by the common man, for the common man.
They have a bunch of good tweets. That's the only I don't like. Yeah,
I've been following. I mean, I had the pleasure of working at Barstool. Big fan of Dave Portnoy.
He's been everywhere, man,
and what he's built.
I mean, it's a cool thing. I like. I'm one of those people. So I love sports are great. Sports are great.
I love sports.
Did you play hockey at all?
I played lacrosse, which is basically hockey
is like,
on grass.
Yeah, it's like the warm weather white man sport, just like hockey is the cold weather. So I'm from Minnesota.
It's a Native American.
Yeah.
Lacrosse is big in Minnesota too.
Oh man, they're both big. Yeah. So I've been watching. There's this guy Pavel Datsyuk.
Oh. There's this guy, Pavel Datsyuk.
Do you know this guy?
Oh, who's Pavel Datsyuk? Yeah, dude, I've watched hockey.
Oh my God. I've watched. So there are some big-time fans on YouTube that post like 10, 20-minute highlights of him. Like, I think within the last week, I've watched every Pavel Datsyuk goal of his career.
Datsuk's got those dangles, bro.
Oh, my God.
He went back to Russia. He left.
He did. Yeah, what a baller, man. I admire that. Like, he's like, man, I've got enough goals over here.
Did Kovalchuk do that too? Who did that? Another.
Ovechkin did it for a little while during the lockout or something.
During the lockout.
Yeah, well, he was before he actually tried to win a cup.
Ovi post cup. Ovi's cup celebration over the summer.
Yeah, that's like. I'm gonna be doing that in a couple of years if Bitcoin works, man.
Let's not get too ahead of ourselves.
Yeah, but man. Sports are great, and if you haven't seen Pavel Datsuk. Go watch the highlights on YouTube. It's the most glorious.
He's got some of the most beautiful dangles. And
if I had to wear one
hockey
jersey
history.
to like a rap music video, I'd be wearing a Pavel Datsuk jersey.
Red Wings jersey.
Red Wings jersey, number 13.
Predominantly white or predominantly red? I think you have to go white on red, like white.
Yeah, I think I don't know, man.
We're 2 hours in, dude. This has been an incredible conversation.
It's been a good conversation, man. I feel like I talk too much, but I tend to.
Shut the hell up. I think people are going to love your talking.
Oh, I appreciate that, man. I mean, I got a lot to say. I've been I like what's happening, and I think the like I come from the startup world. The key in a startup is to have the good people, right?
Yeah.
And when I go to these Bitcoin conferences, like that's why I'm here, right? I'm here in New York for a hack day. I went to Riga, Latvia.
How beautiful is
that? It was amazing. I didn't have plans to be in Latvia, but I showed up in Portugal. And so the thing that Bitcoin has that I didn't expect it to have was these really interesting and diverse and sort of forceful people. And yeah, I mean, my frame of mind here is like I was just at a conference, a residency seeing their demos. Like I'm really impressed by the quality of the people, and I don't think most people in the world, except for those of us who went to one of these conferences, and there aren't many, right? Because the Bitcoiners don't show up to any shitcoin or any other conference unless it's purely Bitcoin.
Mm-hmm.
They show out 3 times a year. And so I don't think people understand the quality of the people that show up to these. And I almost don't want to let the secret out. But it makes me, I mean, it's one of the things that like, it makes me believe more, right? Like the quality of the people, the ease of connecting to the network, something I said earlier. It's like, God, you don't need an API key. You don't need a business development situation. You don't need to give up half the equity in your company. There are all of the nature of money since like prehistory, right? Like this kind of this instinct, like this is one of the things Szabo's written about, is like this instinct towards collectibles, right? Like the instinct to collect may have been a very important kind of evolutionary accident that allowed us to become humans, right? Because if you have an instinct to collect, then you have one thing everybody owns that can be exchanged in the cases of like, you just killed a mastodon and I'm hungry.
Mm-hmm. Here's 10 shells.
You have a market.
Give me a ribeye.
Exactly. Yeah. We all own shells, right?
Yeah.
And it's because of a freak genetic thing where we just have a gene where we like are hoarders, right?
Yeah.
Then all of a sudden you have capitalism, or not capitalism, but like
the beginnings of capitalism.
It basically is, right? It's like it's money. Like let's say 50,000 years ago, 100,000 years ago, like understanding a little bit. Szabo's article is Shelling Out, like a SHELL.
Yeah.
It's a really great article that's kind of about this, the idea that, a Bcasher says money is a medium of exchange first. It's something you can spend with first. Szabo's like, no, man, that's not it. Money starts as a collectible, right? Like when we were pre-humans, we didn't start with dollar bills or lightning channels, you idiot, right?
Right?
You absolutely are Bcash. Like, no, we were trading like blades because they were useful. So they had like a fallback thing, like some sort of, cause you can look at like a burial site and they have, why are there these all these unused like cutting edges? Well, because that's what they were using as money. And so then it goes to shells, then it goes to gold, and
now we're at Bitcoin.
And so it's like learning about that is like one of these other things that's like, man,
you gotta expand your time horizon. Like,
exactly.
And that's in putting ourselves in a perspective
both
of
backwards and forwards.
Horizon.
Like
Exactly.
learn more about history and think more about the future.
Exactly. No, it's important. It's imperative. And like you said, like it's something that people don't think about often enough. And it's something that Bitcoin is beginning to incite in people, is to think about these ideas and really, really at a philosophical and personal level think about these problems
and it's accessible,
what they think about them. And everybody should have a personal opinion on how this stuff should work, because it literally affects half your life. Money is one half of every transaction that you partake in your whole goddamn life. It's pretty important.
Yeah, I mean, there's this weird taboo where you're not supposed to talk. Like in America, like one of the things that was cool about living in China is like people would say like, "Hey, how much money do you make?" You know, they just like they'd be like, because at the time I had like a little bit of programming experience or something, and I like, you know, someone asked me like, "Hey, I'm a programmer." Complete lie at the time, right? And then they'd say like, "Oh, how much money does a programmer make?" And it's interesting because they don't have a taboo against talking about money. And in America, we do for some reason. And I think that's one of the reasons probably why it was so slow. It's like, God, how is it? When I look at myself, it's like, you know, I understand the math. I understand software. I understand the economics. How is it that it took me 10 years to get this? You know, like I should have been one of the first people. And how wasn't I? It's like, it's kind of shocking.
Everybody has their own path, man.
Yeah, but it's interesting. And I mean, I think part of it is like there's sort of this like weird taboo, not only in America, but, you know, in England.
I would say the taboo exists in China as well, just in the form of not being able to question
authority. Yeah, so they have a different taboo. And obviously, I mean, it seems like at least as hodlers are concerned, like one of the interesting things about these conferences is Chinese people aren't there. No Chinese people at any of these conferences.
Right.
So I don't know if it's just an OPSEC thing. They don't want to tell their government they own a lot of Bitcoin or own any Bitcoin or what. But it's one of the interesting things. I was like, wow, it's interesting. People had always told me the Chinese control Bitcoin. Not a single person shows up here from PRC.
Right. That's interesting.
That's
Actually,
odd.
I've never put that together.
Yeah. I was
That's
shocked.
a very astute observation.
In building on Bitcoin, I'm like, okay, where are the Chinese that control this? Right? Like,
yeah.
They, I don't know.
I would imagine
it's interesting. Like
reasons.
It's interesting that they're so present. They're obviously present and dominant in the mercenary mining market, right? But yeah, as far as developers go, almost non-existent. You know, I guess Dash, I think, is a Chinese company. I think that guy is from China. But like, I mean, the you know, Binance.
Binance is not domiciled anywhere.
Not domiciled, but I mean, it's. I think it was conceived of in at least Hong Kong.
Yeah.
But like, you know, there aren't the. It's been interesting that there aren't more. There's not more Chinese participation, at least the development of the hodling side.
No, I agree. It's very mining heavy from China in particular.
Yeah.
And I would argue that narrative that China runs a lot of Bitcoin is a false narrative.
Oh, totally. I mean, that's becoming. I was kind of joking. You know.
It's becoming less. It's becoming. The virality of the arguments becoming.
Yeah, I mean, I met a German
weaker.
miner that apparently does pretty well. I know a miner in Texas that does pretty well.
Yeah, like there's miners everywhere.
Yeah, I mean, there's cheap energy. Cheap energy is not a national phenomenon. Let's be honest. Like, it's that's what most of the game is at this point, is finding.
Well,
cheap
then
energy.
people will try to equate the manufacturing of the ASICs and equate that to like hash power percentage, where there's, and Matt Corallo described this on this podcast previously, but there are economies of scale. Hell of a guy. But
I was observing him program today. I was looking over his, oh, look at that. It's T-Mux. I see. Okay.
Hell of a guy. I was with him when he was writing the disclosure for the CV ebook. Like, we were on the same flight to Riga, and he was writing that before we got on our flight. I was like, oh my God. I do not want to be in your shoes right now. I'm sorry. But
sorry to interrupt.
What was I describing?
I don't remember.
That's what happens when you go longer than two hours.
It's good, man. You have to edit this shit.
No, there's economies of scale with mining. Yeah. So like people like Noriel will try to equate mining manufacturing with hash power. They'll try to equate the amount of manufacturing they do on the hardware side, and then
so they control that percentage
the amount of
the
hash
market.
Power. Exactly. But what you'll find is, yes, you can make all this hardware, but you won't be able to find the amount of hash power needed to consume that hardware in one spot. Like, there's economies of scales. You probably have to go to. Yeah. You're not going to be able to find a 200 megawatt farm.
I mean, last I heard
very
that
commonly
these Chinese miners were like flying helicopters around Africa trying to find like places they could drop in like prefabbed hydro power plants, right? Like,
Yeah.
it's I mean, it's cool. It's like every fluke energy source in the natural world where you have like some mass that has some like trapped gravitational energy because it's at like a higher altitude and it's going to go lower, which is what a waterfall is. It's like we're going to arbitrage all that with Bitcoin. Anywhere that's got a lot of sun and a power grid that, or you know, that's kind of cool, or like, you know, the right combination.
We will support this.
Yeah, anywhere where the energy that it receives is like kind of high or something. Totally hand waving at this point. Like, Bitcoin will be like, oh, let's arbitrage that. It's like,
right?
I admire that. It's a cool thing about Bitcoin, and it's not like,
and it's merging. This is what I wrote about in the newsletter today. It's merging the physical and the digital world.
Yeah, man. It's like it's merging the physical and the digital world. And what it's not doing is it doesn't have like a coal-powered plant that's like blowing a fan into your apartment, killing you with, you know, carbon dioxide. It's a lot of this stuff is going to be renewable resources, it seems.
No, I completely agree. I just had to check my text, so I got caught a little bit off guard. Just had to make sure.
I mean, hey, man, I'm wrecked. I don't even know where my phone is, man.
Welcome to Tales from the Crypt. No.
Hey, if any freaks are still out there, man, I just got to say,
no,
you
but
guys are the best.
We were on mining, and I had to completely agree with you. Like, mining is creating these incentives where people don't. There's those FUD narratives, like we're using up 1% of the world's energy, but it's uncapped, unused, would have otherwise been wasted. If you're looking at these operations in West Texas in particular, which are capping the methane off these natural gas fracking places,
it was still
if
being
that
burnt
gas
anyways.
The thing is, if that gas just goes to the atmosphere unburnt, it's worse for the earth
ozone
than capping it, using it, and turning into Bitcoin. Like, it is literally more destructive to the earth to just let it go to the atmosphere instead of capping it and using it.
Every natural gas
turning
plant,
it into
probably.
exactly, to turn it into a productive good.
Yeah.
And that's where people get misled, where they're like, "Oh, you're burning too much energy." It's like, no, we're using energy that otherwise would have been sent to the atmosphere to contribute to the global warming catastrophe or whatever it may be.
And this is where I'm like, hey, man, like, if you can show us a better system,
right,
that can, that's my little class. It's like we build these digital cash implementations in Python, and it's like, hey, if anybody can show us a better digital cash, I'm all for it.
Right up.
I will be immediately an adopter. But that's the big interesting thing about all these stupid fork wars is like people don't understand what better means. Like, you have to include all the costs of switching. You have to include everything. And like no one's improved on Bitcoin at all, in my opinion. Nothing's differentiated at all.
Right?
And so it's like it's just all noise. And I mean, I'd adopt something that was better, but brother, that's going to be a lot harder than you think it is.
Sister, it's going to be harder than you think it is.
Sister. Sister girl. Woo-hoo-hoo.
Seriously, it's going to be hard to overtake.
It's going to be really hard,
and
man.
if you do overtake it, and this is a narrative that I very strongly believe in, if you do by chance just so happen to overtake Bitcoin, you destroy the whole value proposition of the whole concept of cryptocurrency, because the whole concept of a store of value is you have a certain amount of faith and trust that it will not be devalued.
The narrative is that, like,
if something gets flipping, and it's like, all right, Bitcoin was flipping, who the fuck are you to say that you won't get flipping in the future?
That's one of the switching costs. Yeah, it's like, when you talk about better, you have to include all the switching costs, and one of them is like
psychological,
a psychological precedent in favor of inflation, in favor of changing the money supply, introducing new coins that are valid in this worldview, right? And so that's one of the reasons. Like, I think this is someone like me who's like a little newer. It's like I'm probably a little more open to the idea of some genius coming along with something better than like Bitstein is, or Safe or Pierre or Richard. Like this class of people that basically got me involved. And so like, well, it's interesting to dig in a little bit. Like, what is the source of our their more closed view towards it. And I think it would probably be that they say that the switching cost of introducing inflation and, having two things that are sort of like valid at the same time from this perspective is like they rate that as more costly than I do. And to be honest, they're probably right. Like,
I would argue they are right.
Yeah,
it is a huge burden.
That would be a big, like, in terms of just like, an idiot would say, hey, you can just trade them on Binance or whatever. Like, trade them on, really, that's where an idiot hangs out, right? So, but like, that ignores so many hidden costs. And again, that's why you read Thomas Sowell, right? Like, you learn about what counts as a cost. You need to, there are many hidden costs.
Read your Thomas Sowell, read Paul Stork. Paul Stork goes into like truthcoin.info, his blog.
Yeah.
He goes really in depth into the opportunity cost, especially involved with, he goes deep into proof of work versus proof of stake specifically.
Interesting.
And really, really drives home the fact that proof of stake is arguably a lot more expensive and detrimental in the long run than proof of work because of opportunity cost.
Yeah. And read your, what's his name?
Nick Szabo?
Nick Szabo, yeah.
Yeah.
And even feed me too
we
much.
had an eye connection there. I was like,
Even yes, Szabo. Richard Szabo, like, he's really good at like the he has a bunch of like he has a bunch of interesting stuff about why micropayments don't work. Mm-hmm. Right? Lightning has been kind of sold as a micropayments thing. I think it's more than that, but like Szabo has all this interesting stuff about how micropayment bulls ignore all the hidden psychological costs of all these like millionth of a
having
cent
to make a bunch of decisions. Basically.
Yeah, it's like the cost of a decision is very heavy for a human. So you want to gear towards things like the current SaaS companies do, right? One monthly payment. That's expensive in financial terms, but cheap in psychological terms.
Mm-hmm. And there's a trade-off there.
Yeah, and like, hey, don't underestimate that psychological cost.
It's UX.
Exactly, yeah.
Like,
and
design is important.
The market...
Design is a lot more than what it looks like.
And not just the design of like an interface, but the design of the like revenue model, right? Like how is the money exchanged? Because that's a really tough part for a human. And so like that's one of the things that I think this class, like Pierre, Bitstein, Safe, they're probably ahead of us when they say, hey guys, you're underestimating the total, all things considered, cost of anything besides Bitcoin. Mm-hmm. Like, it's got to be like Jesus Christ it
would literally have to be like somebody like floats down from space.
It would have to
like,
be
this is a better money. Trust me.
It'd have to be more than it would have to be on that level of like more than Jesus probably. Satoshi was like pretty close to Jesus. It'd have to be more. It'd have to be something completely unseen.
There's going to be a religion based around Satoshi, man. The Genesis block, the parallels are too numerous to list off right now.
Yeah. So, this is something like, I'm obviously not, I don't make investment advice. I've only lost money buying this shit. Like, I'm not the guy you want to listen to. But I think this class of these three people I was talking about, they make a good point when they say, hey, like, think about those costs of switching. And at the same time, what's going to compete with it,
right?
So I don't know.
How are you gonna shift this mind share that's currently working?
Nakamoto Institute is it .org or .com? Just Nakamoto.org. To be honest, probably the best website to hang out on in the entire internet. Like, I
do not refute that.
Yeah, like if you want to kill some time and maybe like have your heirs love you for it. Visit that site and read everything.
Start out with their crash course.
Mm-hmm.
Go onto the literature page
and the mempool,
the research page, and then the mempool. I say mempool last. Mempool last, and then the cherry on top, Satoshi's place, or not Satoshi's place, the complete Satoshi.
Complete Satoshi, yeah. Just learn everything about the man. We want it to
that was,
be.
I think my third newsletter I ever wrote was about.
Oh, cool.
The complete Satoshi. I said, hey, like if you're ever like questioning what the hell is going on in this space, like go back to the resource that the Nakamoto Institute has provided us, which is the Complete Satoshi, and read what Satoshi was saying and how he was talking about this, how he was explaining it to people, and you'll find a lot of the same objections that we're seeing on Twitter.
Yeah.
And what you're seeing in public have been hashed over and over again on these forums and in emails with Satoshi. And
it's really true.
It'll give you like a reinforcing feeling of like, all right.
It's an antidote. It's an antidote against these poisonous things. It's like, hey, give me my antibodies. This argument is no longer going to trip me up.
He destroyed like the POWs destroying the environment argument like less than a year in, I'm pretty sure.
Like half a decade before I ever fucking heard about the thing.
Right?
Like, man, what a guy.
Bitcoin
girl or whatever.
Bitcoin is more of a net positive.
Oh.
Having Bitcoin is more positive for the world than not having it.
Yeah, totally agree. And that's another thing. It's not only like in terms of economics, it's not only about the hidden costs. It's like what gains are available to be had, right? Like what are all of the economic interactions we can unlock by having an uncensorable money that any two parties anytime can transact in? I think there's a lot.
It's innumerable. We can't even comprehend it.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of economic activity that is possible, and that the internet. I mean, like you should really think of the Bitcoin and the internet. They're like the same thing, kind of.
We're gonna have an ad lib here. I got my wife calling me, so we're gonna ad lib on here. Hola, bonita. What's going on? We are wrapping up right now. Yeah, we got a 2 hour and 20-minute guy right now. I've been having a great conversation. Where are you? Where do you want to meet? They might be. Let me check. I don't know if they're eating with us though. Yeah, that sounds good to me. Pizza night and Nor'easter? That sounds great. Okay. Completely agree. I'm down. Are you still Manhattan? Okay. All right, text me when you're close. All right, love you. Man. You got to come back. That ad lib just ended perfectly. Justin just took a perfectly timed piss. Well, I talked to my wife on the telephone.
Luckily,
we're in the clear.
Whiskey doesn't take up that much space.
We're in the clear. I thought I was going to be in trouble. We're good, though.
Bonita saves the day.
Hola, bonita.
Hola, bonita. I got to use that line.
It's a good one. It's my favorite. We've been here for 2 hours and 22 minutes. It's been an incredible conversation.
It's been a good conversation, man.
I think we got to wrap it up.
We can
continue it like off the record, but I don't know if people... Actually, I do think people will listen to this whole podcast.
Maybe.
I hope they do.
Maybe. I mean, I've put out a 3-hour video with me coding the whole time, and people watch the whole thing.
I think people are going to very much enjoy this podcast.
I mean, the podcast, what I really love about them is to me, their motivation to go work out. It's like I won't listen to them normally, but while I'm working out, it's like, duh. I'm not going to do my squats to silence, man. I want to learn about Bitcoin. I want to learn about Bitcoin if I'm going to do a bench press.
That's what I watched a Joe Rogan podcast when I was ripping the bike today.
Yeah, it's he has a bunch of interesting ones too. That's to me, that's what these are. It's like, so if you guys, just go work out. The one problem with us Bitcoiners is, especially the programmer side, we're a little weak on the muscle density.
Hey,
some skinny motherfuckers at this residency.
That's why we bring the beefy Bitcoin boys in
Exactly.
to whip you guys into shape. Kidding. I kid. Justin, it's been an incredible 2.5 hours.
It's been a great 2.5 hours.
Where can we learn more about your boot camp? I might launch this tonight. I think I'm going to launch this tonight.
That'd be good.
I'm not going to edit anything, by the way.
BUIDLBootcamp.com. But that
BUIDL.
loogie I had. BUIDL, right? 'Cause it's like HODL,
Bootcamp.
right?
Yes.
So that's the idea. It's like I want to get you. Right now, it's mostly for people who have some experience programming. But hey, I will hold your hand just to the extent I'm able, because it's still early days. And if you fail, I'll refund you and you do it next month. I want Bitcoiners learning to program. I want programmers learning to Bitcoin. BUIDLBootcamp.com. JustinMoon.com has all my other stuff. That's about it. I mean, it's been an incredible conversation, and
it's been fun.
Maybe I'll come back again sometime.
Maybe you'll be back.
Maybe
you'll be back.
Hope so.
That was a lot of fun. I hope you had fun.
You had some tasty drink here.
We
polished off 2 bottles.
We didn't finish
I
two
see
whole
2
bottles.
empty bottles here, Marty.
There's 2 empty bottles, but they were both half full. We polished off a bottle.
That's a lot of whiskey.
Drank a lot of whiskey. As Tennessee whiskey is playing in the background.
It's
perfect timing.
Marty, it was great. I love listening. It's more fun to be on. And hey, you guys listening, do something cool, man. Just find something different, do it, and then come on Marty's podcast.
And I think that's a perfect parting note. Peace and love, freaks.
See ya.